Ability cars.
Instead of the water rapids, you can have a road you go down that's full of potholes in a car with bad suspension and flat tyres. I don't know why they're bothering building a theme park in this country. They're going right, no one will be able to afford to go to it anyway.
How about the Rachel Reeves ride, says Terry in Birmingham. You go round and round and vanish up your own deficit. It's the HS2 ride. It travels at high speed for 10 feet, where everyone gets off and into the replacement bus ride. Tickets are £50 if bought 5 months in advance, or £1,000 on the day.
There's a strong rumour going round that Rachel Reeves is going to have a kissing booth for this theme park. So what I do, mate, I shove a £5 in a pot and you can go in and fill your boots.
Thank you very much indeed, and very generous of you. One from G, who says fast-track entry to every ride for illegals, plus a free night stay in the park's hotel and free food. New theme park bumper cars will have to pay a congestion charge, and the funhouse isn't built yet, despite Angela Rayner's pledge to build houses. And what about Ghost Train doesn't move because the driver's on strike? Have a good day. This is brilliant for the theme park. How about grow your own cannabis farm? Yeah, that's a good one. An Ethiopian safari park, narrated by Angela Rayner, says Gary in Durham. How about that? This sums up the Labour Party to me. The one idea they have to improve growth for the economy is to basically have a bloody big fun fair. It's the type of idea primary school children would pitch, given 10 minutes to come up with something. Well, it turns out, Matt, in Royston, that it's not even their idea. But they're now trying to claim it's their idea, even though it was actually the Tories.
They have done brilliantly on breakfast, but you know on Drive you've done brilliantly as well. Downhill slide ride surrounded by ULEZ cameras so that people are fined on exit. Love it. You could have a Birmingham-themed Whack the Rat stall. If you whack the rat, you can have your bin emptied for free. On the Labour theme park, a house of mirrors where they're all boarded up because they can't bear to look themselves in the eye.
I've got a great one for you, mate.
This is for the is this for the Universal theme park run by Labour?
Moat right around the park.
Yeah.
With loads of dinghies. Call it the channel and say anyone who can break in, all is free.
Imagine the scouts to say you can break into a theme park for free.
Hi, Jeremy. Hey, it's simple. You've got the Labour ghost train.
Yeah.
Where everywhere is.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On your smart speaker. On your smart TV. And on your side. This is Talk.
And everything. He wants to prosecute people to the full extent of the law whenever he feels like it. He wants to bring the law down to make life fair for people. But since last Wednesday, when this judgment was handed down by the Supreme Court, in which it basically said, for those of you who have been living in a cave, sorry, that's not an Easter reference, by the way, that suddenly women are only women if they were born as biological women. There's a huge backlash going on, not least within the Labour Party. Some even government ministers have been exchanging WhatsApp messages over the course of the weekend, trying to work out how they can get around it. Some hospitals have already said that they're not going to adhere to the new law and they're going to just ignore it. And of course, you've got all the radical sort of trans activists out at the weekend threatening to kill J.K. Rowling. The police are now wondering where they all are. Well, as Kelly J. Keane pointed out over the weekend, maybe when you were policing them, you could have arrested them when they had the signs then, and then you'd know exactly who they are. Two-tier policing, heaven forfend. 0344 499 1000 is the number. Charlie Rowley's here with us to help us make it through Easter Monday. Charlie, happy Easter to you.
Happy Easter.
Hope you had a good time. We're going to be talking about, obviously, this whole gender business. We'll also talk about some of the biggest stories that are going on. Would you believe there's some peers, Labour peers, believe it or not, trying to embarrass Keir Starmer by banning Donald Trump from Parliament. We're going to be talking about railway journeys and the trains going nowhere today because Manchester, apparently, Glasgow, Glasgow, Liverpool, a whole bunch of places on the West Coast main line are inaccessible by train and have been since Saturday. You haven't been able to get a train on Saturday, haven't been able to get a train on Sunday, can't get a train on Monday. 3 complete days of a rail replacement service. I don't even want to think about how long it would take to get a rail replacement bus from London to Glasgow. I would imagine it wouldn't get there for about 48 hours. 0344 499 1000. The police have admitted they don't know whether non-crime hate incidents and sort of prosecuting people with them is actually doing any good to fight crime. And then finally, the Sun has uncovered a civil servant who works for the Department of Twerks and Pensions, as they say, because it turns out that she's got an OnlyFans account. She's working from home. She answers a lot of questions during her working day on pensions, and the rest of the time she's twerking. I mean, what else do you need to know? There's a whole bunch of stories going on. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. Well, there's some Chinese people online selling dinghies to refugees, by the way, as well. And also, beer prices have gone up, as of right now, to over £5 a pint. Absolutely shocking stuff. Charlie Rowley's here. Very good morning, former government advisor. It's been a bit of a weird weekend, hasn't it? I mean, you know, Easter's come and gone, more or less. Easter Monday's here. A lot of people not going back to work until Wednesday. Some schools are going back. How can you live in a country like Britain where you can't get from London to Manchester on a train for 3 days?
Yeah, I mean...
How is that even possible?
I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And, you know, we always talk about travel chaos in the UK as if it's like, you know, talking about the weather.
Yeah.
But particularly over Easter,
right.
you know, when people want to get from A to B.
Yeah.
Whereas they should be able to go and see friends,
You
family.
would think.
But you're right, 3 days.
3 whole days of no trains at all.
And Euston Station, you know, a prime location in central London, completely shut down.
Yeah.
You know, you've got to wonder who is planning all of this.
But can you imagine the nightmare of trying to get a rail replacement bus from Euston to Glasgow? How long would that... I mean, I can't even imagine how long it would take. Stopping everywhere. I mean, you're talking probably more than 24 hours, aren't you?
Yeah, well, I couldn't think of anything worse.
I mean can you... just
not
ridiculous.
Glasgow. I mean, I like Glasgow.
No, no, I didn't think that's what you meant. I assumed you meant just sitting on a bus with loads of people.
Yes, yeah.
Because I mean, one of the reasons I got a car was when I first sort of worked in London and lived in Sussex. I used to kind of take a train backwards and forwards. But the train service got so bad and so unreliable that I thought I just can't be dealing with this. And a rail replacement bus service used to double the amount of time you would normally be on a train. So say the train takes an hour and 15 minutes. On the even if you had one part of the line on a replacement bus, you'd end up, you know, over 2 hours, maybe sometimes 3 hours, because it would sort of meander around. I was always like, why can't you take a bus and take it from wherever I'm getting on it straight to London? Oh no, you've got to take it through Sevenoaks, you've got to take it around the back of, you know, Catford, you've got to wheel around, you know, it's really slow. It's unbelievable. I think it's more like a third world country, transportation-wise.
Yeah, I think so. And, you know, as I say, I mean, who plans when you do the railway? If you've got to do up the railway, I mean, everybody understands it needs maintenance from time to time. It does. But, you know, does work happen after 11 p.m., 11 or 12 p.m.,
well,
you know, in the morning?
They have worked out that it's actually busier at the weekends now because people tend to travel when it's the weekend because people don't commute by train anymore. It's too expensive. So during the week would be a better time to do it.
Well, also, a lot of people work from home as well, I suppose. So during the week, there's lots of people that aren't using the trains.
The trains are really quiet during the week. It's at the weekends that they get really busy. But anyway, never mind all that. Keir Starmer has been out and about. He was on holiday when we last were here, I think last Friday. As far as we knew, he was still away. We still don't know where he went. They kept it very secret, so we don't know where he ended up. We haven't seen any footage of it. Maybe because the last time he went on holiday to Madeira, if you remember, he got into trouble for pushing his kids to the front of a sort of toboggan ride, and he got a lot of flack for that. But he was out and about yesterday, and he sent an Easter tweet. Check it out.
Oh my, look at this.
For you, Prime Minister.
Thank you very much. Thank you for welcoming me. I mean, this is what the church is so important about, isn't it? I'm a stranger, I've not been in your church before, and already I feel I know you, and you've welcomed me in. But that in itself is part and parcel of what you do, what communities do across the whole country.
Have a great Easter.
Thank you very much, thank you, I really appreciate that. What are you doing here?
So we're making a garden representing Jesus' resurrection.
Oh, fantastic. Where's the seeds then? Can you put one in there? Thank you very much. Teamwork.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
Teamwork makes the dream work. Very good.
Are you going to remember this moment?
I am, because I'm going to have a sunflower, and when my children say, where did that come from, I'll be able to tell them.
Yeah. When your children say, "What are you doing here?" That's when you know you're in a bad place. I mean, they should have asked him that. She should be asking them, "What are you doing? What are you doing here? And where's your wife? And why have you brought her with you? Does she not celebrate Easter?" "Oh no, she's Jewish." "Well, it doesn't matter. They celebrate Passover. Why? Where's his wife gone? Nobody's seen her for ages."
No. And I think, well, if I was her, I'd probably stay at home during that visit too. If it was going to be as
for some reason, he
that.
picked this church in Bedfordshire to go and see. Have they got some kind of deal with Bedfordshire? They're opening a theme park in Bedfordshire. Now suddenly Keir Starmer's going to Bedfordshire to a church where he's apparently a stranger. I mean, if it wasn't for the children, you'd think he was walking into some Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, wouldn't you? "I'm a stranger, but you've welcomed me with open arms.
Yes.
I thank you."
Yes, very, very bizarre.
"What are you doing here? What's this for?" It's so weird.
Will you remember this moment? Will you remember this moment?
You will. Yeah, because it was the last thing I ever did as Prime Minister before I was forced to resign over the trans issue because I couldn't make my mind up about what to say. I mean, he's got a real problem with the trans issue, hasn't he?
Yes.
Because he has been, and I said this last week, finally the Mail has caught up with it. The fact that he's silent proves that he doesn't know what to say, because how many times have you heard Keir Starmer talk about the law and how important the law is and how the framework of law is something that he knows everything about. He's an expert on it. He was the, chief prosecutor in the... were you? Oh, you never mention it. In the CPS. And suddenly here's an opportunity to make it very clear to his party and to the people who oppose the ruling that, look, this is the law now, regardless of what you used to think and whether you thought that a woman could have a penis. Now it's the law that says that's not true.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is should be an open goal for the Prime Minister, because when you fluff your lines, basically, when you've been asked on many interviews in the past, what is a woman, and you can't answer it, and there'll be clips replayed no end about, of
not least on this show.
Not least on the... Exactly. You would have thought when the ruling comes, as we had last week, you would be jumping on it no end to say, OK, I got it wrong, or, I was trying to articulate a view because I didn't want to offend a trans community. But now that we've got the law ruling in place, I absolutely understand, and we all should, follow what the court has said. That's the end of the matter.
Right.
Let's move on.
And he could even use it...
He could have done that.
Yeah, and he could even use it as a way of kind of... placating, shall we say, those who have been really angered by it, many of whom are massive trans activists, some of whom might not be, but we'll get on to them in a minute. But, surely he could have said, look, this does not mean that you can therefore mistreat people who are trans. It does not mean that you can take trans rights away from people. It just means that, protecting women's rights in women's-only spaces is more important. Totally. And, what's wrong with saying that? But he's frightened of saying it. There's already, as we saw in the Mail on Sunday at the weekend, a sort of group of MPs who are plotting. And number 10 on the front page of the Telegraph saying we're not going to punish the plotters, who are basically trying to plot to see if they can throw a few roadblocks in the way. So again, he's got a problem in his own ranks, which he isn't solving. Yeah,
exactly. And I would have thought, out of the whole debate and that particular ruling, one aspect which everybody should be able to agree on that is blindingly obvious when it comes to sports, for example. So ruling on sports that, if you're biologically male, you shouldn't compete in women's sports because you've obviously got that biological competitive
advantage,
edge. And, but even in those WhatsApp groups, as you referenced the Mail, it was exposed...
Chris Bryant was in it, wasn't he?
Chris Bryant, Steve Race, was it, who sort of said he couldn't believe that, when it came to, women's sports, that this ruling took... Well, I thought sports was probably the only...
It's a pretty straightforward one, isn't it? Yeah.
And so the fact that Keir Starmer hasn't said anything about it so far, I think means that he still doesn't get it. No, he still doesn't know.
Well, he clearly doesn't want to say anything because he still thinks he's like the leader of the opposition, and if he ignores something for long enough, it'll go away. Well, this one's not going away, as we saw from the weekend. I mean, the police are now involved trying to find some people who are holding up some very, very dangerous and threatening signs like kill J.K. Rowling and the only good turf is a dead turf. I mean, I don't know what you need to arrest people on the probabilities of threats, but, Lucy Connolly might have something to say about it, given that, she's been in jail for, the last 8 months thanks to something she wrote down which involved killing people. Let's have a look at some of these trans activists at the weekend, because this will make you laugh.
One struggle, one fight, Palestine trans rights. 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 One struggle, one fight, Palestine trans rights.
I mean, they can't even count, because that's actually 2 struggles and 2 fights, isn't it? Palestine, trans rights. I'm pretty sure that's two things which are not generally thought to be together.
Yes.
Unless, of course, you can show me all the trans activists who live in Gaza.
Well,
I haven't seen many, to be fair, walking amongst the rubble. Have you?
No, I haven't. And
I need access to my own space. I want access to female toilets. Oh, do you really?
Well, exactly.
Let me show you to this building.
Well, quite. And I look, I admire those protesters.
Do you?
Their energy, their drive, their
Well, they haven't got anything else to do, Charlie.
And
to be fair, none of them have got a job.
Well, they should hop on a plane.
Yeah.
Go to Palestine.
Yeah.
Go to Gaza and chant out there.
The same.
Because if you believe in whether it's gay rights, trans rights in Palestine, I'd like to see you do that out there. Because I tell you what, the court ruling in this country, as you said earlier on, made it absolutely perfectly clear that if you are trans, you have protections, you have your rights. Nobody's taking that away from you. But you don't have anything in Palestine. You won't get anything in Gaza. So if you're really that bothered about it, don't water down and don't jump on the bandwagon of trying to take away the issue of trans by talking about Palestine in this country. If you fancy a bit about trans rights in Palestine, go out there and protest and let's see how you get on.
You won't need a return ticket, by the way. Just get a one-way ticket because you won't be coming back.
You won't be coming back. No, exactly.
Except in a box, maybe.
Quite right.
I mean, people joke about it, but it's very true. The idea that these idiots think that they've got two causes which sit side by side in a sort of, Western alliance of thought. They just don't. It's only in the minds of these demented lefties who think it's all the same thing. It's really not.
Exactly. It's a coming together of people, these, it is an extremist left.
Yeah.
That all come together, that jump on any old bandwagon that's going to protest, whether it's for Palestine, when we're talking about trans, when we're talking about, I'm surprised they didn't throw in a few eco.
Yes.
Just
funny enough, funny enough, Nigel Farage was quoted over the weekend saying net zero is the new Brexit, because it kind of is. It really is.
Exactly. And I think, look, if you're trying to win over public opinion, if you really do disagree with the Supreme Court's ruling, I don't, as it happens, and I don't think many people do, but if you do, and you want to try and shape public opinion, you don't water it down, and you don't do it by lumping in Palestinian trans rights.
It's a complete nonsense. It's student politics.
It's student politics. It's an echo chamber of people that all think, as you say, lefty sort of bandwagon causes for.
I wonder where they are on a woman's right to choose. Because, maybe I don't know, maybe they'd have some kind of weird radical view of that. Because they clearly don't think a woman has a right to choose to go into her own space. So does she not also have the right to choose whether to have an abortion? I don't know.
Well, exactly. I mean, and I don't think they would probably know either, because most people that turn up at these protests, if you actually ask them, what are you doing here? Do you know actually what's happening? They wouldn't have a clue. They wouldn't know.
Trans women don't have to worry about such things because they can't get pregnant.
Well, yes.
It's just one of those rules of life, really, isn't it? A couple of other quick ones on the trans thing. Doctors can hide sex from public. This is according to a follow-up story. Apparently, NHS are saying that there is no necessity for transgender doctors to reveal their gender, which means it makes it harder for female patients to guarantee they receive care from a female doctor, which a lot of women feel is very important to them, particularly when it comes to, women's health issues. They would like to be seen by a woman doctor. They don't want to be seen by a bloke in a dress.
And I'm
afraid.
No, I think that's quite right. And I think that was the whole point of part of the ruling, was to actually be able to, as a woman, say, I want to see a female doctor. I want to see a woman as my doctor because of a particular issue that I might have that they would understand. I don't want to be seen by a man, basically. And I think you've absolutely right to have that choice. And so the idea that, the BMA, I think it is, or the medical unions are saying that they're going to not
because they've also got the one policy of one struggle, one fight, where it is the BMA. Apart from included in that is striking as well. That's to go on strike.
Well, have you been on these protests?
Well, listen, I've lived a long time. Exemptions in here's another one. Trans NHS patients can access every women-only space in London. You would bet this would happen, wouldn't it? All NHS hospitals in London are refusing to comply with single-sex laws to stop transgender people using women-only spaces. Well, surely Keir Starmer should speak up about that and say, well, excuse me, you're now breaking the law. How about, we prosecute you to the full extent of the law for breaking the law, a phrase that he's used once or twice in the past.
Exactly. And if I was the Director of Strategy Number 10, or if I was anybody in Number 10, I'd be saying to the Prime Minister, one of the biggest accusations thrown at you is this two-tier the two-tier policing, two-tier justice system. Don't let this be another one, another block, another barnacle on the boat that brings you down because you can't get on top of the issue. So when the law has been clarified, you as you absolutely right said earlier on, someone that's modelled their whole political career on being the former director of public prosecutions, you need to be absolutely clear that the law is the law. That's what needs to happen. That's what needs to be abided by. Institutions need to adhere to it, and anything other than that, and if there's any hate speech, you need to come down on top of those people.
There's been lots of that over the weekend. Lots of that over the weekend, and so far I don't think we've had any arrests.
Well, and
they were clambering all over statues. They were defacing statues, all of which is criminal damage. To my view, it's not even my view. That's just the law. But they weren't hauled off by the police, were they?
Exactly. And this will, I honestly do think this will come to really bite the Prime Minister, because he was very quick to go out and to Number 10 to do a press conference to say that it is far right activists during the protests in the summer around Southport. This is now the far left taking action, and we don't hear, and we haven't heard a peep from him.
No, he said nothing at all, apart from, "What are you doing here?" Perhaps he could have walked out from Downing Street into Westminster and Parliament Square and gone, "What are you doing here? You're under arrest."
Quite right.
I am the law.
And
all this.
And what are they doing? What on earth are they doing defacing statues of Emily Fawcett?
I know.
Someone that has
a women's rights campaigner.
Exactly.
This is how ridiculously twisted it's all got. We've got some really good news, depending on which way you swing on this one. Rachel Reeves is going to Washington tomorrow, apparently to negotiate a UK-US trade deal. I used to be an economist, you know. Can you imagine what Trump's going to make of Rachel Reeves? It'll be hilarious. We'll come back to that. 21 minutes past 6. Charlie Rowley's here. This is Morning Glory.
The fight against fundamentalist Islam is a cause for concern for every country, and it's very interesting to see how different countries treat radical Islam. How does Russia treat it? How does China treat it? How do the moderate Arab countries like Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates treat it? I would argue that it is Western Europe, and the UK in particular, that is the weakest of all countries in the world in being prepared to stand up to radical Islam and take legislation, put it in place to stop it.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 6:24. I'm Mike Graham. Charlie Rowley is here. UK boosts munitions to end dependence on the US is a front page headline on the Times. Britain will dramatically increase its ability to produce explosives, so it no longer has to rely on the US and France for ammunition. As we were saying just before the break there, Rachel Reeves is off to Washington tomorrow to negotiate over a UK-US trade deal. Now, I'm assuming that they've decided Jonathan Reynolds, the Department of Trade and Industry Secretary and former solicitor, is too busy running British Steel now to be able to pop over to Washington to have these negotiations. But I saw Georgia Maloney with Donald Trump last week when they looked very friendly. They looked very sort of at ease with one another because he knows that she pretty much sings from the same hymn book as he does on immigration and many other things. Rachel Reeves will not have the same kind of chemistry, will she?
No.
Because she's got the same chemistry as Keir Starmer. She just kind of sits there and, doesn't look natural at all.
Exactly. And I think, as Donald Trump says, and has said previously, he holds all the cards.
All the cards.
Or, Rachel doesn't have any cards because, he'll know that she's going over there cap in hand because of the desperate situation that the UK economy is in because, she choked off growth in the last awful budget. So he knows that she's going over there because she needs a deal. The US don't need one at the moment in time. They're calling all the shots.
And he'll be very charming, as he always is, but I'm sure he'll also just not give her anything at all. Let's have a look at what he said. I think this was last week when he was asking, when he was asked about a possible state visit to the UK.
I was invited by the King and by the country, great country, they're going to do a second, as you know, a second fest, and that's what it is. It's a fest, and it's beautiful, and it's the first time it's ever happened to one person, and the reason is that we have two separate terms, and it's an honor to be, I'm a friend of Charles. I have great respect for King Charles and the family, William. We have it's really just a great respect for the family, and it's a very great honor that and I think they're setting a date for September.
It's going to be a smaller visit initially and then a bigger state visit to follow after, is that the plan?
Yeah, they say that it's going to be, I don't know how it can be bigger than the last one. The last one, was, as you know, was incredible. But they say it's going to be even more important. So it's a great honor to be so chosen.
So there he is. He's pretty sure he's already got it in the bag. Front page of the Sun this morning, grand, bold Duke of York. People were slightly aghast to see the Duke of York parading out in public yesterday when he went to Windsor for a ceremony at the Easter church service. Joking with his ex-wife, Sarah Ferguson, experts say it's a show of support from his brother, King Charles, who was joined by Queen Camilla. He just won't disappear, will he?
No, it's been, I think, over a year since he was
last
like a barnacle
on the side of the royal family. It's like, can you not just stop turning up?
Exactly, yeah. I think over a year since he was last spotted. But I thought originally that King Charles had given him the silent treatment, had sort of put him aside because he didn't want...
Well, I think he tried to, but I think he's so relentless that he won't go away. He just keeps turning up. Well, why can't I come to church? All right, then. Yes. You can imagine the scene.
Yes.
Where, he's trying to get him out of the cottage, isn't he? Or the lodge, or whatever he's in. He's still in there.
Yeah, is it Frogmore?
No, Frogmore, I think, was where Harry and Meghan were staying. I think it's called the Lodge or something like that. Windsor Lodge.
Oh, right.
But it's not really a lodge. I mean, it's got about 20 bedrooms or something like that. You can spend literally, a week in every bedroom for 6 months or something like that, and just move around. And I think he shares it with Sarah Ferguson, funnily enough, his ex-wife, but they don't sleep in the same room. But there's plenty of room for everybody, But yeah, it's just a bit embarrassing, isn't it?
Well, yes, and it could be, rightly or wrongly, an attempt to be tactical if you're trying to get the family back together for Easter, and that still excludes Harry.
Yes.
And if you then need to, maybe because of ill health, if you need to rope in like Beatrice and Eugenie, then obviously
I suppose
the
you
father
need the dad
figure
sitting
there
in the background,
still needs to be around. So maybe that's something that might be coming down the line. But,
maybe
a show of sort of solidarity, I suppose, as a family. But I suppose always with the Duke of York's presence, Prince Andrew. It's notable that Harry is absent. And, you know, absent, obviously, during that shout-out by Donald Trump there to say he loves the family, William.
Well, that's
no, well, this is no mention of Harry.
No. Well, he's so far out of the loop now, he only finds out about his dad's illnesses by reading the news, you know, online. So, you know, he's not in a good place.
Probably too busy in the kitchen making jam.
Yeah, probably, supporting his wife, you know, who wants to become a billionaire, apparently. Now, my favourite story of the day has to be page 9 of The Sun. Just for the headline alone, Department for Twerk and Pensions. This is a civil servant who's been filmed moonlighting on a porn site while giving advice over the phone to pensions claimants. I mean, if you ever needed evidence that working from home is a scam, here it is. You know?
Well, quite right. I mean, you know, pensioners have had a bit of a hard time of late, haven't they?
Yes. Well, many of them have wanted to try and claim pensioner credit so that they can get the heating allowance restored. But it's very complicated. They have to fill out about a 249-page questionnaire or something ridiculous, or it's 249 questions or something like that. So it's really difficult. And people like this woman, presumably, who appears in the Sun not wearing very much, sitting there working from home with a work and pensions headset on, answering questions while X-rated messages are popping up all over the place because people are sending questions like, "Are you wearing a thong?"
Yes,
as opposed to, "How can I get my winter fuel allowance?"
Well, she's, to be fair to her, it says, I mean,
first take all your clothes off.
Yes. To be fair to her, it says the woman who said she was called Katie, so we don't know.
No,
but she
might
said
not
she
be a
was
real
called
name.
Katie, but she's on message. To be fair, because it does say in a particular video, it says the woman (brackets Katie) exposed her boobs, then appeared to have a pop at the government axing winter fuel payments. So she's on message. She knows how tough it is for people out there.
One follower, in an apparent reference to her stripping while working, said, "Don't you feel bad?" She replied, "No, I don't. If they paid us more, it would be all right."
Well, there you
so
go.
She's claiming she doesn't make enough money.
Yes.
In another aside, she said, "Am I naked under this? I've got some bikini bottoms on."
Yes.
I'm sure what that's going to do with the pension fuel allowance. You know, I suppose it means that clearly, you know, there's no problem heating her house.
No,
she doesn't need to wear very much.
No, but you know, I mean, it's a way to get hot under the collar, I suppose. If you've had your winter fuel turned off, if it's not quite hot in your home, you know, talking to Katie, if that's who she claims, if that's her real name. I mean, I think most people a lot of people might be calling up today just to try and get.
They might be. Apparently, we have got a video, but we can't play it because it's not suitable for this time of the morning, which is no doubt true. Apparently, she also said that she was working 9 a.m. till 3 p.m., the usual civil service hours, then going on the school run. She says, "I'm not sure this is what the government had in mind when it allowed people to work from home." You can say that again.
9 a.m. She's turned up early. She's come in early, I think.
A DWP spokesman told The Sun, "We're aware of this video and we're investigating whether the person featured is a member of staff." Well, I mean, it's a bit of a weird fetish to pretend to be a member of the Department for Work and Pensions and answer questions about pensions, you know, on the phone, isn't it?
Yes, she could just be a very helpful volunteer.
She could.
But it depends, I suppose, whether it's, you know, the actual central Department for Work and Pensions, the government department, or whether it's a local job centre plus, or whether it's another organisation that's linked to another Quango, one of those many Quangos that need chopping. But anyway, well, you know, she's
it's a great Easter story.
It's an Easter story, yes.
Resurrections all round. It's 6:33.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On your smart speaker. On your smart TV. And on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 6:34. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through, of course, until 10 o'clock. This is Easter Monday, so I hope you've had a good Easter weekend. You may not be working today, in which case, have a good time. Have an enjoyable Monday and prepare yourselves for the return of everything. We've got a voice note here from James.
Good morning, Mike. Now, I find the Labour Party so hypocritical, Mike. I mean, you've got a couple of Labour MPs, and probably Starmer as well, that wants to ban Trump from coming to the UK. You can't do that. He's the American president. But then you've got people like the tea lady that's willing to go to China. I mean, that Chinese bloke, he has people executed in fields. It's an absolute disgrace, Mike. What a bunch of hypocrites. Anyway, Mike, Mr. Starmer is back to the foundations for Baton Baraton. Oh, what an absolute plank, Mike. Anyway, Mike, I'm already looking forward to Plank of the Week again. Cheers, buddy.
James, thank you very much indeed. That's the story on the front page of the Times there. MPs and peers have launched a campaign to block President Trump from addressing Parliament, accusing him of being a liar who has disrespected Britain. I mean, who are these bozos?
Well, exactly.
Lord McFall of Alcluth. The Lord Speaker said it would be inappropriate for Trump to speak in the Palace of Westminster. Why?
Well, exactly. I mean, why?
I mean, didn't Barack Obama speak there?
He did.
And I can't remember if Biden did. He probably wouldn't remember either.
No,
don't ask him. Joe! You know.
But this is. I mean, you talked about, the Labour Party, the student politics of protest.
Yeah.
This is just again an own goal by the who have been up in arms about two of their MPs that were very, very critical of Israel being banned from entering Israel.
Yeah.
And now, they want to ban the President of the United States. That James, the last voice message was absolutely right to say he's the President of the United States,
right.
Biggest economy in the world. We need to do a bit of trade.
Also, again, Starmer will be embarrassed by this because as much as Starmer doesn't like Trump, he keeps having to pretend that he does. And you can tell that he's already instructed all of his cabinet ministers to, whenever they go out onto the media round, always be very nice about Donald Trump. Doesn't let any of them say anything negative. And whenever they even want to say something negative about the tariffs or whether, they're not happy with Trump, they just don't do it.
Yep.
So he'll be waking up this morning, kicking the cat around and gnashing his teeth, going, why can't these people just get into line and do as I tell them,
Well, if he's around, I mean, we haven't heard from him.
Well, the only reason we know he's back in the country is because he went to that Bedfordshire church. But I mean, we don't even know where he went on holiday. We don't know who he went on holiday with. We don't know whether he used one of Lord Ali's many, properties.
Well, quite. Yes.
We just have no idea.
And that could be a pre-record. You never know that.
It could be.
Trip. We never,
Yeah. What are you doing here? It's not even Easter.
It's Christmas.
Yeah.
Why have you bought eggs?
Why are you filming one of these eggs? It's true.
Yeah,
the trouble is, he's got such a low credibility rating now that you would almost believe any of that. I mean, the spin that's coming out of Downing Street at the moment is absolutely off the scale. And I mean, you've worked there, so you know what it's like. But I mean, some of the stuff they're dealing with and some of the sort of the truth masking that's going on, should we say, is quite extraordinary. Carol from the Wirral says this: morning, Mike and Charlie. Two things I really want for myself and my grandchildren: huge control of immigration levels and safe spaces in sports with same-sex priorities. I think a lot of women would say that. Tony says, Mike, Twotier Keir is an atheist. And Bill from Cheshire, High Court gender ruling. Labour will do what they always do, i.e. nothing. Try to ignore it or try to challenge it. Remember Brexit? They ignored it from day one and ever since. Reality means nothing to them. Dogma is everything. This will be subject to review and kicked into the long grass. I don't think it will be, because I think there will be plenty of people, like the people, I mean, there's people in the Express today to say that the three women from Scotland who won the case, effectively, for all women, have been subject to all sorts of death threats. I mean, it's become a very serious story, which Starmer is going to have to get into the middle of. He can't ignore it.
I think because of his absence and because of the lack of leadership and because he's been on the wrong side of the debate, in being tripped up in interviews in the past about just not being able to answer what is a woman. That's why it'll come back to dog him. I mean, look, people will have obviously a very mixed view of Tony Blair, but the one thing I think that Tony Blair did get right was during the election campaign, or in the run-up to Sir Keir Starmer becoming Prime Minister, was that he was saying, don't talk about it. the Labour Party should not be getting involved in an issue that is obviously it exercises the left, but it is you're talking about such a tiny proportion of people.
Yes.
The trans community is such a small number, but the idea that the left have engulfed in this debate.
Oh, but you have to be a trans ally, don't you?
Well, yeah, I mean,
it's insane. It is literally insane.
And just ignoring the overwhelming majority of people in this country, 50% of which are women,
yes.
that want single-sex spaces.
Unfortunately,
that
I'm
want these
afraid, for
protections.
bad news for some of you fascists out there who are sort of trans ideologists, women have got the vote.
Well,
they fought quite hard for that.
Well, and not if poor old Emily Fawcett, who always was defaced over
she
the
was,
weekend. Because,
and I mean that's an offence. It's a criminal offence, criminal damage of a publicly produced portrait or statue. I mean, it's ridiculous. Speaking of which, we've got a new montage of Keir Starmer when he's asked, "What is a woman?" Here we go.
Trans rights are human rights. Trans rights are human rights. Trans rights are human rights, and I support the right to self-identification. I think we need to respect the right to self-identify, and we're committed to updating the GRA to introduce self-declaration for trans people.
We don't think that self-identification is the right way forward.
Is it transphobic to say only women have a cervix?
Well, it is something that shouldn't be said. It is not right.
Is it right or is it wrong for Rosie Duffield to say only women have a cervix?
Well, look, biologically, she, of course, is right about that. Trans rights are human rights. Trans rights are human rights. We've also got to stand up here for trans rights and take that fight on.
That a transgender woman is a woman and should be allowed on a female ward. What if one of them was sitting here and said that to you, what would be your response?
Well, I disagree. I disagree.
So he's a bit mixed up, isn't he, Keir? So which is it? I mean, he doesn't even think 100% of women can't have a penis. He doesn't know. He's not sure. He thinks that 1% of women can have a penis.
Yes, and I don't understand why he's flip-flopped over this issue, because you can say all of the things that he said, but he's just unable to explain it by saying, look,
Yeah, because he's terrified. This is the problem. I mean, this is why he's such a useless politician and a useless leader, because he can't be deliberate and he can't convince himself, never mind anybody else, that something that he believes in is right.
But just having a sort of a base explanation to say, look, if you're trans, I want to help you, I want to support you, I want you to live your life.
In many ways, it's hilarious that he's literally been hoisted by his own petard, because he's been marching around telling everybody how the law is important and the rule of law is more important than anything else. And here we have a rule of law, and he doesn't know whether to get behind it or not.
Yes, and that undermines his entire credibility, the whole reason why.
Maybe this will be the hill that he dies on. Maybe, because I've been saying ever since he got in, something will happen to him that will make it impossible for him to carry on as Prime Minister. And I wonder if this is it. Could be, or certainly will be something significant enough if he doesn't get this right, that will just be another thing that people will throw back at him to say, well, hold on, you were wrong, or you couldn't. Because he's also, again, given what's going on with Donald Trump, in diverse, complete opposite direction to Donald Trump, who said very clearly on the inauguration day, there's only two genders. And Trump's going to go, well, what, you defend, so you think trans rights are human rights, do you, Starmer?
Yes,
because that's what he'll call him.
And exactly, and that's why, look, he's got to be able to appeal to, well, I mean, his party is tearing itself apart over this, but he's got to look beyond that, to look at what the public are thinking, and it's a good old common sense general public. And the reason why they're leaving the Labour Party, the reason why they haven't returned to the Tories, because
they're joining Reform. According
Reform.
to a new poll yesterday from MRP, More in Common, 16,000 voters, so quite a big sample. They would win the most seats in Parliament if a general election was held imminently. That's quite a big thing for Nigel Farage.
It is, and I think because it comes down to common sense. And what's so, it's so fascinating because everybody knows it. Your callers, everybody listening will just know the common sense approach about dealing with this trans issue. They'll understand the common sense about the economy. They'll understand about what's happening in America. People will understand about net zero. They want to put the UK first. And yet, you know, politicians just won't say it. And that's why, but Nigel will, and that's why people are suddenly flocking to reform, and they're doing well. They're consistently ahead in the polls because people just want plain-speaking policies. They want someone who's got the pizzazz and the ability to be able to take on any of the establishment. They don't want...
And I wrote a piece in the Telegraph last week about exactly this, because it's going to be a big shock, I think, for Labour and everybody else when these local elections happen on May the 1st. I think Reform are going to do a lot better than everybody thought, as they indeed did in the general election, you know. Ed Miliband, meanwhile, is accusing Reform and the Tories of being endangering the planet by sort of dismissing what he thinks is the way forward on net zero. But he's been accused of being delusional because he's still playing on with his net zero push, because it's absolutely and utterly ridiculous what he wants to do. And he's another one that just keeps issuing these untruths. That, you know, he talks about that there was a project launched by Sadiq Khan, I think, last week or the week before, £2.6 million of public money going to schools in London to put solar panels on the roof. He wrote a piece to the Observer yesterday saying this will mean that you know, there will be 15,000 schools with reduced energy bills. Well, one, he doesn't know that. Two, you can't call it a reduced energy bill if you've spent £2.5 million of public money in order to do it. Because first you've got to get the £2.5 million back. Yeah, exactly. Which isn't coming back.
Exactly. And setting up GB Energy, which is part of their, you know, which doesn't actually generate any...
it doesn't buy energy, doesn't sell energy, doesn't have energy. Exactly. Just has Jürgen at the top of it. You know.
For a nice sum as well.
For a very nice sum. And I think he's now hired somebody else. I think there's now two of them. They don't have an office. They don't have a website. Last time we checked, they don't even have a website. You know, what are they doing, these people?
And this is the absolute rhetoric. So from Ed Miliband sort of criticising the, you know, or claiming that the attacks that he's had and that Nigel Farage and the Tory party are out of touch, attacking what he perceives, Ed Miliband perceives as clean energy jobs. These are the future. Well, OK, there might be a lot of jobs that could be created when it comes to net zero or clean. But how many jobs are being risked and lost at the expense of these policies? Well, we've just seen British Steel in Scunthorpe could have gone under. 3,000 plus people could have lost their job because you're...
And they probably will still lose their jobs in the sort of medium term, to be honest.
I mean, in Wales, Port Talbot, I think, you know, didn't get the same sort of treatment because, you know, because you're importing, you know, you're driving for net zero all while saying we can't drill in this country, but we're going to import coal from, you know, Japan or somewhere else.
Yeah, America, you know, Australia, places very far away.
Exactly. So you're
a child sitting with Keir Starmer in that church could tell him, you know, if you bring things from places that are very far away, that needs quite a lot of energy to put into the ship, which is generally powered by diesel. Bring it here.
And at a time when you're having to increase your own defence spending because of obviously wars ongoing, Russia in particular, where we've overly relied on foreign partners to import coal or oil or gas, that should be a wake-up call throughout all of government, including Ed Miliband, to say, actually, we need to think about this a bit more strategically. We need to just, actually, not even think about it strategically. I mean, I don't even know what I'm talking about. Just be commonsensical about it and say, let's look at what we've got in this country, the resource that we've got, let's use that, let's not rely on foreign partners.
Well, I've said for years, look, if you want to make, you know, heat pumps more popular, make them cheaper. But they're not cheaper and they're not as good.
No.
So people don't want to get rid of their gas boiler in order to get something that's more expensive. It doesn't work as well. Same goes for electric cars.
Exactly.
Don't bother trying to sell on me an electric car if it's more expensive than the one I've got, which is petrol, and it only goes for a couple of miles before you have to charge it again.
Yeah, electric car that happens to be from China, which could be spying on you as well.
That's another story. You know. That's a good one, actually. We'll come back to that. The Chinese spies, apparently they're all over the place.
Everywhere.
They're spying on park benches, lamp posts. It's like a James Bond film. Also, we'll talk about wine prices going up so much that people have started to not drink it. According to the French, they've been producing a lot less wine, and beer prices are going up as well. Also, we'll be talking about incels. Apparently, there's a suggestion that incels should get dating coaches, which is, to me, probably one of the most ridiculous stories I've ever seen. But it's coming up to 6:48. This from Dave. It says, "Morning, Mike. Maybe Andrew being out in public gave Charles a chance to change the locks." That's David Aberdeen. And another one says, "Morning, Mike. Why is it every time things like this happen, they talk about changing the law? Just enforce the law that exists and lock them up." Absolutely right. And he includes a bumper sticker, which he's got there for Morning Glory. Well done, Dave. Thank you very much indeed. And one from Alan in Merseyside. Any member of Parliament who doesn't adhere to the law of the land, they're not fit to govern and should be removed from public service. Well, I mean, I've got no problem with people disputing laws and demonstrating against them, but yeah, certainly if you're in the government and your leader supposedly defends the law of the land, and the Supreme Court has just made the law of the land, then surely you have to go along with it, don't you? 6:48.
It's not about transgender, it's about women and girls. And biological women don't want men in their toilets, in their change rooms. I've got a daughter who's in high school. I don't want boys in her changing room. It's not about transgender people. It's about the rights of women and girls. The 2 female judges and 3 male judges, was it, in the Supreme Court?
Yeah.
That took them about 10 minutes. They must have gone back, had a cup of tea and gone, do you know what? We're Supreme
And it was
Court
unanimous.
judges.
It was unanimous, wasn't it?
We're Supreme Court judges, and we're having to tell the nation what a woman is? I mean, come on.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 6:51. I'm Mike Graham, and of course, this is the home of common sense. It's the only place to hear it. We're here until 10 o'clock. It's Easter Monday. It's a bank holiday. You may have the day off, in which case enjoy it. I don't think the weather's going to be particularly good. It's a bit of rain and nastiness going on. But we are going to be talking to Simon Calder about the carnage, because the roads are going to be pretty crowded later on as people try and get home after a long weekend. Some people are being delayed at Gatwick Airport, which still has more delays than any other airport in the country. This from Rob in Lincoln. He says, Mike, I'm a 67-year-old on a war disablement pension, armed forces veteran. Can the DWP advise me on twerking my pension and keeping fit? Yeah, very possibly. Well, you might be called, is it Katie?
Yes,
it was Katie, wasn't it? So an OAP rings up this DWP civil servant to get help with his heating. She answers and ends up with his trousers around his ankles. No wonder they're all freezing, says Matt in Hove. I'm not sure that's how it's meant to work. I think she's operating in 2 different sort of arenas.
Yes.
But it's easy to confuse the two, I guess.
Could be.
Because imagine if she was taking calls as well from punters as well as pensioners,
yes.
That could get a bit confusing, could it not?
I think so. I think you'd have to be quite a skilled civil servant or
dexterous
yes. to make sure that you're not online.
Yes.
Especially if you're taking multiple calls and dealing with multiple, it could be
it's easy to make a mistake.
There,
absolutely right. Let's have a look at this front page of the Daily Star. The Chinese are eavesdropping on us. It's got a picture of James Bond in the form of the last James Bond sitting on a bench. The spy who bugged me. It says basically Westminster park benches and pubs are being bugged by the Chinese in order. Now you've probably frequented a few of these pubs before you thought I was about to say park benches.
I thought you were going to say park benches.
I was not going to say that. You may well have done. I mean, people. I mean, you do see people wandering out the back of Downing Street into Green Park occasionally.
Yes.
Who was it that somebody did? Somebody not find a whole cache of like secret documents in a bin once in St James's Park?
Do you know what? I've got a feeling. Although I don't want to get into trouble, but I think it was George Osborne that.
I think it was.
I think that name rings to mind.
There's been a couple. Oliver Letwin lost some papers as well.
Yes.
But I think, he also had the bizarre people coming into his house late at night. I mean, that was another story altogether. Remember that when sort of men entered his house late at night and he didn't know how they got in there, and there was an incident they had to call the police to get rid of them. It was a bit strange. Anyway, let's just keep to this one, shall we?
Yes.
The peccadillos of the Tory party previously. Chinese spies are snooping on the UK government by bugging park benches. Officials hold sensitive information in Westminster. They've been warned about central London hotspots to avoid. These include the Red Lion pub. I've been to the Red Lion pub.
I've been many times.
Full of Is it full of Chinese agents? I haven't seen Chinese agents there.
Well,
I guess you don't know who they are.
That's the thing. The thing, and I think because of course there was the whole a couple of parliamentary assistant people that worked in Parliament.
I mean, I think the Chinese spies are actually inside Parliament. They're not in the pub.
In the pub,
they're already inside the Palace of Westminster. I think. Aren't they?
Well, it depends how many MPs are in the pub. I suppose that's where you might find them. But I mean that's a very popular pub, very very popular hotspot. I think. For politicos, for journalists as well, for people that want to pick up any kind of information. So if you ever see, note to self. Next time you're walking past, if you see somebody lurking just outside.
It says here at St James's Park, as I was saying, is apparently a green space where lunchtime meetings take place between researchers and civil servants. Obviously not the ones that are working from home. And the Chinese have been literally bugging the park with devices in the bushes and under park benches. I mean, mind boggles.
I mean, what civil servants are doing in the bushes? I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's Katie. Maybe Katie's
third bush on the left. I'll see you after the Canada geese pond.
Yes.
It is a bizarre story, but anyway.
I mean, the things that they must pick up on those park benches as well. I mean, because obviously the public go and sit down and, it's not just... It's not an exclusive park.
No, it's usually very... Chris Philp MP has apparently said that the Chinese are building some kind of a, web of spying all over the place. But similarly, another Chinese story, this one in the Mail, Chinese online shops sell £150 dinghies for refugees. So apparently you just go online and order a dinghy. Who brings it to you? I mean, that's quite a big delivery, isn't it, of a dinghy? A bit of a giveaway. Why have you got a dinghy delivered to the outside of your house? Are you planning on going somewhere?
Well, and I think, people will be questioning. I mean, people like Ian Duncan-Smith, who have always been slightly critical and cautious of the relationship that we have with China. But if we can't stand up to, whether it's the online companies or whether it's the state to say, hold on, this is, we've got immigration, particularly illegal immigration, is the number one issue, I think, in this country at the minute.
And these places, on a website called Alibaba, they're selling high-quality refugee boats and refugee inflatable rib boats for as little as £150. Some will also offer an engine as part of a package.
on Alibaba
I'm sorry for
website.
laughing, but it's ridiculous.
Very authentic.
I mean, it's not really difficult to catch. Surely not difficult to catch these people. It's all happening in plain sight.
Exactly, and the whole point of smashing the gangs, of which this is clearly part of it, and they're still able to advertise, hide in plain sight, effectively. Just again, is another
think smashing the gangs might start with, putting these people out of business?
Well, quite, yes, yeah.
You would think, call me old-fashioned.
You would have thought.
Now, I've got something to ask you, which has been drawn to my attention. We've got a picture of you. I don't know where this is from. It may be from earlier this weekend, possibly. David Bull yesterday. You and he dressed up. You and he dressed up as the Easter Bunny. This is not AI, is it? What's going on with that?
I'm afraid that is me. I can confirm. I think I must have had one of those.
He didn't drug you, did he?
Park bench moments.
Yeah.
Park bench. I think I must have. Well, I was. The story here is that I was at Christmas.
Yes.
I did David Bull's show over Christmas, and was told that I needed to be sort of festive. So I turned up as a gingerbread man. I thought that was festive.
Gingerbread man. Okay.
And then it was sold to me that we were doing something similar.
Right.
It's a bit like when you get an invitation to a costume party and yet you're the only one in costume.
Yes.
So I turned up in
with
my
bunny ears.
Very nice bunny ears.
Right.
And lovely.
What's he wearing?
Well, that's supposed to be... It is a hat with two ears up on the front, apparently.
It's not working for me. I think yours is better, to be honest.
But it wasn't his, because he turned up in
this may disqualify you from serious political discourse.
I'm a serious political...
I know you are.
Believe it, yes.
I know. We don't require you to wear an outfit, though. You know.
Well, I feel I've dressed down today. Sorry, I've let you down.
I'm pleased you put a jacket on.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Final story for those of you who are plotting to have a big lunch today. Apparently, wine lovers and wine producers across the world are in despair. Last year saw less plonk bought than at any other time since the 1960s. Partly because there's less wine being made, partly because it's too expensive, and partly because some people don't like drinking anymore. What's the world coming to?
I've always preferred South African or something from Chile.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a particular preference. I've still got a sort of hangover about South African wine from the days of apartheid, when people didn't drink it, you know. And French wine, I don't drink an awful lot of, but I do. I had a very nice bottle of 1975 Barolo at the weekend, which I'd spent quite a bit of money on. It was so good, you know, and I was serving up to my children who not even born yet, but their mother was only just about 2. But that's another story. Anyway, very good to see you, Charlie.
Thank you very much.
We shall fight the good fight continually from here until 10 o'clock, of course. It is Easter Monday, so if you're not working, welcome to Morning Glory. We'll see you after the news.
Five, 4, 3, 2, 1.
87222, start your message with the word talk. Who would you send to space and why?
The person I would love to send to space would be Mr. Keir Starmer. And then I would tell the Galactic Empire that he was part of the Rebel Alliance and let them blow him away with the Death Star. No Brits was involved, no fingers could be pointed.
You carry on taking the medication, George. Yes, I'd send all the Labour government to space with a one-way ticket and throw in the SNP for being useless. They're all a bunch of... Oh, all right, fair enough.
One person, quite frankly, I think needs to go to space in a one-way journey is Jeremy Kyle. He goes on about his age one more time, how he's 60 this year, he was 59 last year, repetitively over the course of the weeks and months. We have to hear him, I'm 60 this year, I'm 60 this year.
Richard Tice, did you put that cheeky bugger up to that?
I'm hoping he's going to send me the invoice because that was absolutely brilliant.
Which MP would you send to space?
Although I'll get in terrible trouble if I answer that. But it's fair to say there's quite a long list.
The sad thing is about sending people into space on a one-way ticket is I don't think that we've built a spaceship big enough to take the lunatics off this planet. I mean, from the net zero loonies to the transgender loonies to the racists to the terrorists, there is just so much to the wokerati. We need some big spaceships.
Big spaceships.
Good evening. I never know how you're going to start this conversation, Jeremy.
Katy Perry went to space today, OK? Who would you send... I'd love her to say what I wanted to, but I'd never disrespect her. Who would you send to space who could never come back?
Well, I'd be happy to send Ed Miliband to space, I think.
Oh, that is an outrageous question, so I'm not even going to answer that question.
Sam Matterface, so you get the job, yeah? Come on.
No, Sam Matterface, I tell you what... There's no.
I think David Lammy would be the person I'd want to send up in space and never come back again.
Yeah, the problem is how much would the bill be for him to munch through whatever food on the way there?
Hey, it worked.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's coming up to 3 minutes past 7. It's Easter Monday. It's a bank holiday, but don't worry, we are here. The Home of Common Sense does not take a day off just because some people don't want to go to work. Schools are going to go back to school this week as well. Many of you are preparing to send your little ones back tomorrow. Some going back on Wednesday. Big A-level season coming up as well, so if your kids have been swatting away for that, keep giving them as much encouragement as you can and tell them that, listen, it's very important that you do well, but if you don't, it's not something that you should become too depressed about because there's always another way. Simple as that. 0344 499 1000. Big story of the day this morning. One that we sort of dangled out there 5 days ago. As soon as the Supreme Court ruling came in last week on whether a woman could be a trans woman, when it was ruled that absolutely not, it could not be a woman. A trans woman is not a woman. In other words, a trans woman is a man. I've said, why doesn't Keir Starmer say something? Why doesn't the man who's in charge of law and order in this country, the man who paints himself as the great lawyer, the man who paints himself as the great barrister, the chief prosecutor, as he often refers to himself when he was head of the Crown Prosecution Service, why on earth has he said absolutely nothing? And finally, the Daily Mail has caught up with our journalism from 5 days ago. Starmer must break his silence on trans judgments, is what they say. Campaigners and MPs demand the Prime Minister backs the ruling after saying nothing for 5 days. Of course, the reason he's saying nothing is because he doesn't know what to say, because we'll be proving to you through the course of this show that right up until the very last minute that this judgment was handed down, he says trans rights are human rights. That's his position. So he can't very well go now to the Supreme Court and say, actually, I was wrong, because we know Starmer doesn't like admitting that he was wrong. We'll be showing you what he was doing over the weekend. He went to a very bizarre event, a church event. He's an atheist, where he spoke to some children in a very awkward way. We'll bring you that. We'll show you what he's doing. But meanwhile, within the Labour Party itself, there are members of his own cabinet and his own inner circle who are exchanging WhatsApp messages about whether they can fight this particular judgment and make sure that they make it no longer worthwhile actually pushing through. We've got hospitals who are saying they're not going to follow the guidelines. You know, these people are breaking the law. There's trans activists, defacing statues over the weekend, chanting death to J.K. Rowling. None of them have been arrested. The police are now seeking them. Two-tier justice is back, ladies and gentlemen. And there's only one person to talk to about it. That's Isabel Oakeshott. She's coming up very, very shortly. Also, we'll be talking to the Simon Calder travel guru, because we need to find out why on Saturday, on Sunday and today, there have been literally no trains running north out of Euston to Manchester, to Liverpool, to Glasgow. I mean, what sort of a country are we living in? You have to take a replacement bus to get from one end of the country to the other. Absolutely extraordinary stuff. This is Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham. This is the Home of Common Sense. Let's get it on. Well, I suppose we need to start, before we speak to Isabel Oakeshott, with a little montage of Keir Starmer. This is the man who has said nothing about the Supreme Court ruling, a very significant Supreme Court ruling, 5 days ago. Here's what he said in the past.
Trans rights are human rights. Trans rights are human rights. Trans rights are human rights, and I support the right to self-identification. I think we need to respect the right to self-identify, and we're committed to updating the GRA to introduce self-declaration for trans people.
We don't think that self-identification is the right way forward.
Is it transphobic to say only women have a cervix?
Well, it is something that shouldn't be said. It is not right.
Is it right or is it wrong for Rosie Duffield to say only women have a cervix?
Well, look, biologically, she, of course, is right about that. Trans rights are human rights. Trans rights are human rights. We've also got to stand up here for trans rights and take that fight on.
That a transgender woman is a woman and should be allowed on a female ward. What if one of them was sitting here and said that to you, what would be your response?
Well, I disagree. I disagree.
I'm not quite sure what's he disagreeing about there. Isabel Oakeshott, very happy Easter to you. Welcome. I know it's a bit confusing trying to follow the mindset of our Prime Minister, but, I mean, what does he really think?
I've no idea. Does he have any idea? I mean, I think we know that he thinks that trans rights are human rights.
Yes.
Actually, if I were advising him, I would say, actually, this isn't that awkward for you. You know, the Supreme Court has made its judgment, and you, as Prime Minister, are a respecter of the law.
Yeah.
So, actually, this is pretty straightforward. You just come out and say, You know, we've followed this case with interest. It has huge implications for a lot of people. I mean, there are hardly any trans people, but as we know, the reason this has become so seismic is because they are so shrill and militant in their demands for ever more rights that it's begun to affect much of the population in terms of where we can't expect to see people. So he should just say, look, you know, this has been a very important landmark case. I respect the rule of law. I respect the integrity and brilliance of the various legal brains and judges in charge. And this is now the situation, and everybody, it is incumbent on everybody, all institutions, to uphold this law. And he can easily square this all off by saying, of course, everybody should continue to respect the personal choices of those who change their gender to live as they please, as long as it doesn't impinge on other people or in any way make life difficult or awkward or inappropriate for others. And I think that's a perfectly reasonable line.
Of course it is perfectly reasonable, but that's why the perfectly unreasonable people don't accept it, because they don't. It's not good enough for them to be able to live life as they wish. They want to be able to tell you what you have to do when you're in the same place as they are, and how you have to treat them and how you have to speak to them. You know, there's perfectly plenty of examples that we can pick of how laws are there to aid civilised society. You know, some people don't like the speeding laws, but it doesn't mean that you should be allowed to speed just because everybody else isn't, you know, because you've got special rights. You know, that's the rule of law, which is what Starmer's constantly going on about, is the rule of law. You know, point ends. That's it. You know, but what I wonder is whether he will also prove that there is not a two-tier policing system in this country by going after those who are holding up placards calling for J.K. Rowling to be killed, people holding up placards saying the only, you know, good turf is a dead turf, you know, chanting death to J.K. Rowling in public squares. The police apparently have gone back to their kind of Hamas protests or Hamas sympathiser protests, where they're saying, asking for people to help them to identify people who they were actually physically looking at, who they now want to question.
Well, they had no problem whatsoever, did they, hot-footing it to the homes of so-called far-right thugs, including children, by the way. There are a number of really young children that were frog-marched off to police stations after those summer riots. It didn't require public appeals and the assistance of other observers to do that. No. But weren't we told last week that two-tier policing was all in our imaginations? Well, if that's the case, then I look forward to seeing even-handed justice demonstrated on the back of this, because we can't have people chanting death to J.K. Rowling and stuff like that with impunity. That is far worse than...
Surely that's incitement to violence, isn't it?
Well, quite literally. I mean, it just literally is. It's a death threat.
Right.
And we know that we had a caller to talk last week, an astonishing call that I think we're going to follow up this week, of some individual who said 16, no fewer than 16 police officers hammered on his door after some pretty innocuous
Oh, yes,
thing.
I heard that, yeah.
I mean, quite extraordinary. So where the resources are politically minded to be there, then they can be there. But I think that more broadly on Keir Starmer, it's not going to be sustainable for him to maintain his silence on this. I mean, I think he's still on holiday, supposedly, but he's been able to break his holiday to do various other things. And he's clearly going to have to issue a statement, or I think more likely he will just choose his next broadcast interview opportunity to answer the question. And I think he'll have to stick by the line. But what's very clear is that there are a number of his own ministers and senior Labour backbenchers who have no intention whatsoever of respecting this ruling.
No, and that's another thing. You know, the front page of Telegraph today, we've got number 10 statement, "We won't stop pro-trans plotters." Now, these are people who are potentially discussing how they can break the law, and they're ministers in this country's government. That can't be sustainable either, can it?
It really oughtn't to be sustainable, and it's a really bad look for the government. And I don't see how why they're so blind on this. You know, the whole trans thing, it is an issue that affects and exercises their own voters in those marginal seats, the so-called red wall seats, you'd be surprised by how many people are wound up about this. They hate it. You know, they ordinary voters, and I'm just going on the basis of what I've seen at various political rallies.
Yeah.
You know, you get a huge cheer for a comment which echoes Trump's statement that there only are two genders, male and female.
Yeah. Well, that becomes Starmer's other problem, doesn't it? Because Rachel Reeves is on her way to Washington tomorrow. God knows what is likely to come out of that, but I'm looking forward to quite a few wooden videos from inside the White House if she gets into the Oval Office. Because just as Trump had some great chemistry with Giorgia Meloni last week, you can't imagine him quite having the same chemistry with Rachel Reeves. But again, Starmer's terrified of upsetting Donald Trump. If Donald Trump gets wind of the fact that his government is actually going to go against the legal framework of his own country in order to recognise trans rights, you know, Trump will give him another slap, won't he?
Well, yes. I mean, this is a very bad time to be provoking Trump, because he does seem to be making, he and his administration are making all the right noises about a trade deal with the UK. And if there's one thing we know about Trump is that he's very easily inflamed. You know, he can be pretty mercurial.
Yes.
And something like this is quite likely to wind him up, depending on who's speaking in his ear about it. So I don't think it would necessarily derail a trade deal, but we don't want to give he and his administration too many excuses not to do it.
I know. No, I don't think it would ever derail it, but I just think that Starmer's terrified of any kind of... When you see any government minister on television, they physically stiffen when you see any kind of question about Donald Trump, because you know that in their heart of hearts they want to absolutely unload on him and say what a ghastly individual he is, what a terrible man, you know, he's a sex predator, he's horrible, he's a bully, he's all of the things that the people who want to ban him from Parliament say he is. But I can't say that because Number 10's told me not to, and I've just got to be nice about him.
Yeah, completely. You know, you absolutely know that's what they say. And I think it almost immediately that Trump came in and started his new approach to economics, we saw anyone on the left begin to wheel out this excuse for Rachel Reeves' own economic shortcomings, her failure to deliver her agenda for growth, which she put at the heart of everything she's doing. It's now all going to be the fault of Trump and his tariffs. It's extremely convenient, isn't it?
Oh, it really is, absolutely. Just while we're on the subject of Starmer, before we let him go, I don't know if you've seen this, but you must see this, because once again, if you want to do peak awkwardness, this will make your teeth itch. Here's Keir Starmer yesterday at a church in Bedfordshire.
Oh my, look at this.
For you, Prime Minister.
Thank you very much. Thank you for welcoming me. I mean, this is what the church is so important about, isn't it? I'm a stranger, I've not been in your church before, and already I feel I know you, and you've welcomed me in. But that in itself is part and parcel of what you do, what communities do across the whole country.
Have a great Easter.
Thank you very much, thank you, I really appreciate that. What are you doing here?
So we're making a garden representing Jesus' resurrection.
Oh, fantastic. Where's the seeds then? Can you put one in there? Thank you very much. Teamwork.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
Teamwork makes the dream work. Very good.
Are you going to remember this moment?
I am, because I'm going to have a sunflower, and when my children say, where did that come from, I'll be able to tell them.
Yes, it was God's work, apparently. You can, again, I can just see the meeting that took place behind closed doors with Morgan McSweeney saying, look, everyone's saying you never mention Easter. You better put a couple of tweets out about Easter, which you got wrong, by the way. And then you better be seen in a church at Easter. It'd be so awkward. It's kind of embarrassing, isn't it?
We just pause for a minute to reflect on the fact that he appeared not to know what an Easter garden is.
Right.
I mean, either he didn't know what an Easter garden is, and anyone who has had any kind of Christian upbringing see those Easter gardens every year in a church. It's just one of those lovely traditions, a bit like a Christmas tree.
Yes.
And perhaps Starmer doesn't realise that Easter is actually a far more important time for Christians than Christmas is. So either he didn't know what an Easter garden is because he said, what are you doing here then? What's this? Or he did know and he was just talking nonsense. I don't think either is a great look from our Prime Minister.
No.
That is ignorance of our Christian tradition of the highest level.
Exactly right. And frankly, it would have been a more appropriate question if the children had said to him, "What are you doing here?" Because he's a self-confessed atheist. I don't mind if he's an atheist. It doesn't matter. I don't really care. But, you know, stop trying to pretend you're something you're not. It doesn't work.
Oh, God, he's so wooden, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's so wooden. He is so bad.
I mean, who says I mean, he's supposed to have his own children. Who says to, like, a 6-year-old, "Oh, thank you very much. I really appreciate that." You know,
he's
you just don't.
weird. It's weird. And I actually have to give credit for the kid in that video who was making all the running there. I mean, the kid was the one leading the chit-chat.
Yeah,
wasn't he?
totally.
That kid was pretty good at small talk with his teamwork, makes the dream work. Will you remember this moment? Really impressive.
Yeah.
You've got Starmer, you know, acting in the role of the juvenile there.
It's true. One final thing, just off to the side, front page of the Telegraph is on page 2 inside. Police forces have admitted they do not know if non-crime hate incidents help tackle crime. Well, I think I can help them out there. You probably could as well.
Help them with that. Not only are they a complete waste of precious police time, but so I think are increasing number of actual so-called hate incidents. A non-crime hate incidents are a complete nothing and are worth nobody's time and trouble. But unfortunately, the whole hate crime law is now falling into heavy disrepute as it's basically used by a whole load of feeble people to try to settle scores. I think the entire thing needs to be abolished. It is a huge waste of police time and it infantilizes our own population with people calling the police to come and intervene because someone said something a little bit hurty.
It is absolutely extraordinary, ridiculous. Great to see you, Isabel. Thanks very much indeed. Enjoy the rest of Easter Monday. Isabel Oakeshott there, Talks international editor. Let's get a voice note from Nick.
Morning, Mike. It's Nick Moore from Loughborough. The thing I find most incredible about all this trans nonsense is that odious lefties like Chris Bryant are the first to bleat when anybody dares to suggest that we go against any ruling that the ECHR makes, and yet it's quite happily to openly rail against a ruling of our own Supreme Court. Truly exposes the sheer hypocrisy of the Labour Party.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Nick. That's absolutely right. Maggie in London says, talking about these protesters, I think most of these protesters are paid activists and will protest anything as long as the price is right. I mean, placards saying queers for Palestine. Really? What a joke they are. Absolutely. So good to see you on this Easter Monday. Well, thank you, Maggie. And Mel says this, I find it awful that after the ruling, women's safety and rights for some people is non-existent, but the rights of a trans woman are the be-all and end-all. The fact that they have banners saying punch a turf in the face just shows how dangerous it is for women. If you don't agree with us, we will use violence against you. Once again, police let women down. There's no arrest for inciting violence against them. Where are all the MPs saying how awful it is and something must be done? Two-tier policing and ruling again, says Mel. I know, absolutely right. You know, and meanwhile, Keir Starmer says nothing. The square root of sweet FA, because he's frightened. He doesn't want to step in the wrong box. He doesn't want to step in the wrong shoes. He's scared he might upset the wrong people. Well, I'm afraid he's going to have to make a judgment of his own. And if he goes against the Supreme Court ruling, then I'm afraid he's done. He's finished. He may as well stick a fork in him. 7:21.
Putin does not like President Trump. I know everybody's trying to make it out as though they're buddies. They're not. President Trump is the president of the greatest nation in the world, the United States of America. Russia has a dictator president and will kill off their enemies, kill off their political enemies. It is a mafia, and they are attacking innocent people in Ukraine. We need to make sure we're protecting Ukraine, because protecting Ukraine is America first. Russia will not stop with Ukraine. They will keep going.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 24 minutes past 7. I'm Mike Graham. This is, of course, Easter Monday, so if you're having a quiet one, because it's Bank Holiday Monday, it'll all get back to normal tomorrow. School's going back tomorrow, many of them going back Wednesday as well. Let's get a voice note from Paul.
Look, enough's enough now, mate. Women cannot become men, men cannot become women. What is so hard about that? Look at these people in London and all around the country kicking off, oh, I can't have my own way. This is ridiculous. It weren't as bad as this before COVID. Honestly, mate, social media and COVID-19 is the reason why we're in this situation right now. How can you be so gullible? Listen, the moment that we start saying that men are women and women are men, right, we might as well just deny all reality, because that's ending it, mate. We're done, aren't we? I am not being forced to say that a woman can be a man, because I'm sorry, the entire notion is insanity.
Well, you don't have to worry about being told or forced to do that, because the law says that a trans woman is not a woman. So, quite frankly, it's the complete opposite of that. The problem is some people are not going along with it. Let's have a quick look at some of these trans activists at the weekend. They don't seem to be very sure about a lot of stuff.
One struggle, one fight, Palestine trans rights. 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 One struggle, one fight, Palestine trans rights.
It's actually more than one, isn't it? They can't count. I think that's the problem. They should have spent more time in school actually learning mathematics than learning all the wokery. Let's talk to Baroness Diane Hayter, though, former Shadow Deputy Leader of the House of Lords, and now Labour peer, of course. Baroness Diane, a very good morning to you. Happy Easter.
Good morning and happy Easter to you. I hope you've still got some eggs left for today.
Yeah, well, of course. You have to always keep sure you've got the eggs that last all the way through till Monday. This whole situation is becoming a bit ridiculous, isn't it? You know, we've got the Supreme Court coming out and saying what they've said. Keir Starmer seems to have said nothing at all for 5 days and seems to think he probably won't say anything. We've meanwhile got NHS hospitals threatening not to enact the law. We've got a story that says doctors can hide their sex from the public. You know, you never thought this would be the issue that would split the Labour Party, did you?
I don't think it. I think where you're wrong is about it splitting the Labour Party. Look, the majority of the Labour Party are clearly behind the judgment, and it'll, you know, with very soon it'll settle down, and we'll just understand, as your previous person said, that biological sex is what matters. There's a bit of a knee-jerk reaction at the moment. I wouldn't worry too much about it.
Well, if the Labour Party
I think you're wrong, by the way, about the NHS. I think the NHS, although you're right, we've heard a blip, and I think the GMC, i.e. the body that regulates doctors, has still got some way to go. But I think the majority of the NHS will be really pleased that this has been settled, that they can now get on with women's wards and men's wards and you know, move forward now. And I think it's the other way around. I think it's a turning point. We have gone through a rough period over this issue, and I think the Supreme Court now will move us forward, and you know, before long, these arguments will be well behind us.
OK. Well, I'll come back to Keir Starmer in a minute, but according to a piece in The Telegraph, an analysis of 28 hospital trusts in London found that none could guarantee single-sex spaces. This was a day after the ruling from the Supreme Court. The hospitals often use NHS England's 2019 policy to justify their guidance to give trans people equal rights to access single-sex wards, and they basically show a range of exemptions allowing trans women to share toilets, showers and hospital wards with women. So unless that's changing, or has changed in the last few days, that's the situation.
Well, I think what you're saying is they can't guarantee it at the moment. It will take perhaps a bit of time to make sure that for those who are trans, there are some side wards or there's some way of dealing with them. And of course, hospitals can't do that overnight within days of the ruling. But I think the government's been quite clear that the NHS will go along with this, and we will see single-sex wards back where they used to be. So I'm not very worried if it hasn't happened, overnight or over week, if you like, and over the Easter holiday. But I'm absolutely certain the NHS will move that way.
But this is where it becomes interesting.
I'm more worried about other bits. I mean, I think that the GMC, which regulates the doctors, is still not of the view that you have to know the sex of your doctor. Yeah. They're using the word gender, and seem quite content for a doctor to say that they're of a gender different from their birth sex. Yes. And I think that the regulator really has to understand that if a woman says she wants a woman doctor, what she means is she wants a biological woman doctor, and not someone who is a trans woman. And so I think that there are other bits of our system, if you like, that do need to change. I'm really less worried about the control of the NHS. I think that they've been fairly clear. But isn't
the issue here, though, Baroness, that because that some of these organisations have been so steeped in this trans culture, if you like, for the last few years, that they've become if you like, sort of slightly discombobulated by the whole issue. And because I spoke to a doctor just the other day, and he really struggled to kind of use the word woman. He suddenly started talking about biological women. I said, look, you don't have to call them biological women anymore. Just call them women. And, this whole... I think the medical fraternity has been steeped in this for quite a long time, and I think it will take quite a long time, knowing what some of the, trans ally brigade are like, to change it.
I think you're partially right. The expression I hate is cis woman. Apparently, I'm a cis woman. I don't know what that means, but and so I'm absolutely with you on that. I'm a woman, and I'm not assessed as a woman. I'm not described as a woman. I don't identify as a woman. I wasn't assigned women at birth. Right. Sorry, I'm a woman. So get hold of it. But I do think that the gem of what you're saying is right. There are a lot of people that somehow either got taken over by this, I'm afraid it is a bit of a cult, or were frightened into it. Yes. I think what's been wonderful have been actually not the doctors, but the Darlington nurses or the Fife nurse. And it's been women of a certain age, and I'm of a certain age, as they say, who've actually said, look, this that this is nonsense. And I feel very sorry for the younger women who perhaps don't have, I can take it, I'm old and no one's going to do anything to me. I'm quite worried about how many young people were sort of forced to say things that they really didn't believe and they knew weren't logic. And I think we are at a turning point. I think what's happened will give strength to those people who actually always knew we were right, that women are women.
But this is the thing,
it's
become a generational thing, and much of it as well. I was reading a piece of the weekend, and they were quoting from some of these younger sort of people in their 20s who were out on activist kind of patrol and demonstrating over some of the pictures you're seeing now, with some pretty horrible signs being held up, by the way. And a lot of them saying, why should we be told what to do by a load of old judges? I haven't heard that for years. But they're saying, the new generation of people actually do believe that trans women are women. And I don't think they're right about that, because I think the vast majority of people agree with you and I, and the Supreme Court ruling. But, this isn't going away anytime soon. And to go back just for a minute to Keir Starmer, if the Labour Party is so united on this, why has he not come out and said what he should say, which is that this is now the law, and I expect everybody, not only in the party, but in the country, to adhere to the law, because I am, of course, the former prosecutor of the CPS. I know about the law, which is what he would say about almost everything else, but he hasn't said it here.
Oh, I'm not very worried about that. He has actually just had a holiday away, and I think he only got back yesterday. So hang on, you know. And
So
it doesn't
we expect
need
a
the Prime
statement
Minister.
soon, then, do we?
Well, there will be a government statement. I don't know when it'll come. Of course, there will be. We always make statements on these big things, but I mean, I think over the young people, I think they divide into two lots. I think there are a group for which this was a cause, and they felt, you know, they were at the front end of history or whatever, and there were another group that I think we also have to understand, who were trying to be sympathetic to people who felt, you know, that they did want to change gender, or they were very uneasy with themselves. And I don't think we should knock those people who just wanted to feel sympathetic. I think the interesting thing, and I think you referred to it earlier in the bit about some of the demos, is much more worrying. There's a minority that are clearly violent about this. When I've had to walk through demos and that to go to meetings about this, it's been rather large men on the whole shouting in my face, and there's quite a lot of aggression around.
There is.
Now, this is a small minority of them, but it's horrid. But the other thing is, I do wish these activists, particularly the one who talks about this and Palestine being the same issue,
right,
if they understood the terrible problem that particularly gay men, I have to say more than women, have in some of the countries they mention.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to be in a number of African countries, or in Iran, or probably also in the Palestinian areas, if I was a gay man. And I do wish that some of these people who want to speak for human rights would actually look around the world and say there are bigger problems facing gay people in some of these countries, some of whom are actually put to death for this.
I know.
And that seems to me a big issue, and that ought to be the one, if the campaigners want to work on, that they ought to concentrate their efforts on, rather than threatening women.
Yeah, rather than
with
defacing
gallows
statues.
and defacing the statue of force, you know, of one of our great female heroes.
Yeah, I know, it's embarrassing.
You know, courage calls to courage calls to courage everywhere. Well, let's be courageous. Let's speak up, particularly for, as I say, for gay people in the countries where they don't have the rights that quite correctly we give to gay people in this country.
Indeed. One final question, just a little piece on the front page of the Times today. Some of your fellows in the House of Lords have written to the Lord Speaker, amongst them Lord Folkes of Cumnock, a former minister in Tony Blair's government, of course, asking if the Donald Trump visit to Britain should include a visit to Parliament. In fact, they say it shouldn't, on the grounds of his attitude towards Britain. What do you think of that?
Well, I think it's for our government to do this state visit with care. I think it's unlikely probably that Trump will come to London. I think it's much more likely he'll go to Windsor or somewhere else. It is a state visit, and therefore there will need to be a proper welcome to him for that. But
isn't Parliament the place to do that?
Well, it's much more of a royal visit, I think. You know, the invitation, as you remember, was from the King.
Keir Starmer gave it to him, though.
Yes, it did, but it was a letter clearly from the King, and it will be a state visit. I mean, part of the reason he gets a second visit is because, obviously, in his first visit he met the Queen, but now of course we have a king, and that is really the difference, and why
he's also the only president since I think Grover Cleveland to actually get 2 terms split by 1 in between. So I mean,
but that's because we've got 2 different monarchs. Yeah, but that's, as I'm saying, partly because we've got a different monarch now.
Right.
From his first.
But I mean, US presidents,
Elizabeth when he first came.
US presidents have spoken in Parliament before, haven't they? Barack Obama, I think, did.
I can't remember. I'm glad you're better briefed than I am. But we have a lot of other state visits, and most of them don't. I know Macron is having a state visit, and I'm not sure whether he's going to address Parliament. Right. And the French are obviously
but this is not the argument. But Lord Foulkes is not making the argument that he shouldn't address it because it's not a state, because it's a state visit that only involves the royal family. He's saying he shouldn't be able to speak in Parliament because of his attitude to Britain, which is a slightly different.
But it
argument.
may not. Well, he's coming to Britain, and he is, as you know, of Scottish origin, which is where Lord Foulkes comes from. I'd be quite surprised if that was on the agenda, and I don't think we should make it into a big issue. Actually,
I don't think I should make.
There are more important things with the Americans at the moment. We want them to try and stay involved in Ukraine. We really need a close relationship for the future of Europe, and keeping them supportive over Ukraine is the big issue.
But wouldn't it be better?
Not just for Britain.
But if you want to keep America on side, wouldn't it be better to offer him the ability to address both parliaments? No.
I don't necessarily think so. I think that our royal family will look after him and host him in the way. And I imagine
if he gets the idea that
Scotland as well.
Yeah, but if he gets the idea that the House of Lords doesn't want him here, he's not going to be too happy about that, is he?
Well, the House of Lords hasn't said that. As you say, it is a letter that's gone. I don't know who else has signed it. But, let's not make rows where they don't exist.
I'm sorry,
view.
It's the Labour Party that are making the row.
Yeah. I wasn't telling you that. I wasn't talking to you that.
No, Kate Osborne, Labour MP, former member of the Women and Equality Select Committee, has asked Lindsay Hoyle to mirror John Bercow's decision to block Trump. In a letter seen by the Times, she said, "I'm asking you as the Speaker to agree it would be inappropriate and mirror the previous Speaker's recommendation."
Well, as I say, it seems to me the advice to all our colleagues is let's not make rows where they're unnecessary. Let's concentrate on the big issues. And the big issues, America's a very important ally, as I say, particularly at the moment over Ukraine and the future peace of Europe and trying to keep Putin back in his box. These actually are the big issues, and I think we need to really concentrate on those, would be my advice to all my colleagues.
Maybe you could have a word with him.
Not that they always listen to my advice, as you know.
Have a word with my Lord Foulkes next time you see him. Give him my best regards. I mean, it's not his fault. He's a Hearts supporter, but, I've known him for many years. Thank you very much indeed. Baroness Diane Hayter, former Shadow Deputy Leader of the House of Lords from 2017 to 2021. Still no sign of Starmer. He may be on holiday, but he took some time out to go to church yesterday. Let's get a voice note from Dave.
Morning, Mark. I've got one for you. I'm just off on my way to work, Dave at Manchester. Every year you've got to take your car for an MOT by law to make sure it's fit to be on the road. But the roads aren't fit for my car to be on when I'm getting smashed to pieces in every pothole that I go past. Have a good Easter, mate.
That's a very good point. I mean, you should be able to give the MOT to the road. That is a great idea, isn't it? You should actually get, if depending on where you live, right, you should get a discount on your car tax if the roads are not properly fixed, because they're not going to be properly fixed pretty much anywhere at all, are they? It's 7:40. Simon Calder coming next.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 7:43. I'm Mike Gray with you all the way through, of course, until 10 o'clock. Peter Cardwell's in for Julie Hartley-Brewer. Margaret says, morning, Mike. There was a book years ago, What Katie Did. I had a copy. Also, What Katie Did Next. The mind boggles how much we're paying this working from home person. That's, of course, Margaret in Birmingham, talking about Katie, the so-called twerk and pensions employee, civil servant, who's doing a bit of twerking in her spare time while working from home and helping people with their pensions questions. We'll get more into that story in a bit. Let's talk now, though, to Simon Calder, travel correspondent for The Independent, travel guru, I prefer. He's in Croatia currently, which is probably a good place to be right now. Bank holiday Monday. Simon, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. Yes, I'm working from the Adriatic, specifically from the sun deck on board the good ship Salvi di Mare.
Very nice.
And, yeah, well, it's all going well here, but it's not going particularly well elsewhere. And I can run through, well, any form of transport you like.
Well, yes, let's kick off with the trains, because we mentioned it sort of in passing last week, but you know, I think I wasn't probably quite listening quite as clearly as I should have been, because on Friday, Good Friday, there were some trains going to Scotland, some trains going to Manchester, some trains going to Liverpool, etc. But Saturday, Sunday, and today, no trains at all going up on the West Coast line, which I find absolutely astonishing.
Well, the Department for Transport, which, by the way, of course, lifted 1,100 miles of roadworks, also put in place, because it owns Network Rail, which is doing this planned engineering work, massive engineering projects. So, yes, exactly as you say, today the southern end of the West Coast main line from Milton Keynes to London Euston is closed. Also, north of Carlisle, same line closed. So a journey from Glasgow or Edinburgh via the West Coast main line to London looks like the work of several days. And that's what we kind of expected, but there's been all kinds of other problems which have just landed. So Cardiff Central, all of today, there are going to be delays, cancellations, curtailments of trains because of urgent repairs to a bridge at the station. That cuts down the number of tracks that can run in and out. And we've also had problems as far north as Inverness. That seems to be out of the way. And I tell you what, a lot of people are going to be travelling on cross-country trains today because they couldn't yesterday because there were so many cancellations. This is the company that basically runs anything going through Birmingham that isn't going to and from London.
Right.
They've already cancelled a Birmingham to Manchester this morning. There's a Cardiff to Nottingham later, but they cancelled or curtailed at least 50 trains yesterday, leading to all sorts of problems, blaming shortage of train drivers. And as we have discussed before, Sunday isn't part of the working week for
no, and presumably neither is bank holidays as well.
Well, no, bank holidays tend to be more manageable. It is literally the Sundays. This goes back to the Victorian era, when, of course, you wouldn't be expected to work on Sunday because it was a day of rest and important spiritually. And that is still the case. And it's
yes, I know that. I know personally a lot of ASLEF drivers feel very spiritual on Sunday, and that's why they like to not work. It's very
well,
true.
they probably like to spend time with their family, and if their unions have negotiated that they don't have to work on Sundays, well, why would they?
I think most of them are communists, aren't they?
Well, no, I mean, and to be absolutely clear on ASLEF's point of view, they say we want to have a 7-day-a-week railway, but the subtext of that is a big asterisk saying, and by the way, we will get that, but only if you pay us a lot more money on our basic salaries.
Yes.
And that is the sticking point, because already the railway is losing £400 per second.
Yes.
And the ASLEF and the RMT union want everybody to be levelled up to the highest possible.
Of course
paid.
they do. Because 70 grand a year basic isn't enough. Let's just go back to Euston and the West Coast Main Line for a second. So are you saying there's a bus replacement service to Milton Keynes, but a train thereafter to Manchester?
Oh, it's more exciting than that. So here's what happens. If you're going from, let's say, London to Glasgow, you get on a train from London St Pancras to Bedford. There's quite a lot of those. You get off, you walk across the car park, you find a bus which is going to Milton Keynes. You get there. There will be trains running out of Milton Keynes going north. You get to Carlisle, you get off your train, you get onto another bus. If you're going to Glasgow, that will take you to Lockerbie, and then you get on another train. If you're going to Edinburgh, it will take you all the way from Carlisle to Edinburgh. So there's some exciting journeys.
Do they put a time on that as to how long that would actually take to get from London to Glasgow?
Yeah, look, you're looking at about 7 hours roughly, and the thing is,
that's if nothing goes wrong.
Well, yes, of course. But anyway, anybody who's experienced rail replacement buses will know that the train gets in, everybody piles off. There's a big scramble for getting on there. You've got people with buggies, with bikes, and everything. It all gets anyway. And
you've got to add at least another hour or two. I'm just talking probably 9 hours. But I've got a very selfish reason for asking this. Is my son's got to go back to Manchester, and he was going to go today, and I've warned him against it. But if you're saying there's only one bus, and he could get...
Oh, no, they've got more than one bus, but if I were going today from Manchester, from London to Manchester, I would be looking at either National Express or Flixbus, because then you just get on a...
Yeah, no, I'm not talking about only one bus in total. I'm just saying there's only one bus replacement between Bedford and Milton Keynes. You wouldn't bother?
I don't think that would be a journey for me, Mike. I think I would prefer to get something like Chiltern from London to Birmingham, and then see if cross country is prepared to run any trains from...
I think he's going to take the why don't you let your father buy you lunch option and go tomorrow.
I think that sounds extremely reasonable.
Yes.
Yeah, should all be back to normal tomorrow.
And then one final quick one, piece in the mail today. Gatwick has retained its unwanted title as the country's worst airport for delays. Average departures last year running an average of 23 minutes late. I've been so conditioned by living in this country for such a long time, I don't actually think that's that bad.
Well, no, it's not. And certainly today, where we got long delays...
Only 23 minutes.
Well, look, it's down by 4 minutes from what it was in 2023, just ahead of Manchester and Birmingham airports. Birmingham, actually, a couple of problems, 2 flights. One got in from Heraklion 6 hours late in the early hours of this morning. One from... Florida, I think about 36 hours late. So big problems there. But yes, we all know there isn't enough aviation capacity. At Gatwick, you've got one flight landing or taking off every 55 seconds. World's busiest single runway airport. And therefore, if things are happening like air traffic control failures elsewhere in Europe, it's all going to unravel at Gatwick before it unravels anywhere else.
Yes. And just one last message from Howard in Suffolk, who's watching this morning. He says, let's just take a moment to marvel at the brilliant quality pictures and sound from Simon Calder on a boat in Croatia. Wow. I mean, I have to say, everywhere in Europe that I go has better Wi-Fi than anybody does have in London.
Well, I'm marvelling at the amazing pictures and sound quality of you coming back to me here in Croatia. That's making my Easter Monday, Mike. Thank you.
It can be done. We'll have a wonderful time. We'll see you when you get back. Simon Calder there on the woes of travelling around on Easter Monday. Don't bother, I think, with the very firm suggestion from the Simon Calder travel guru. Let's get a voice note from James.
Morning, Mike. It's James from Blackburn. Where is Mr. Starmer? Where is he? Where is Keir on this trans stuff? Has he got lost up in his own cervix or something? No one can see. Well, I know where he is. He's in a church being weird around children. What the hell was he doing? Why was he speaking to them like that? Thank you. I appreciate it. I mean, who says that? Who says that to a child? Thank you. I appreciate it. What are you doing here? I've got a sunflower. I will be able to tell my children that I got it from you. Oh, my God. God. You think he can't get any worse, but he just gets worse every time. They've just got to get rid of him. I mean, just get rid of him. Just put him in a box somewhere out of the bloody way. Enjoy the rest of your Easter, Mike.
James, thank you very much. I mean, there's so many gimmicks coming out of Downing Street right now. You might expect him to be nailed to a cross next year, the way things are going. 7:52.
We want to look at, fake patriots. You've only got to look as far as Nigel Farage, who's fawning over Putin.
Why do you say that?
Does not
Why do you
fit
say he's a
with
fake
our
patriot?
flag? Because, look, we've seen this from other potential leaders in the past in this country, and we've rejected them. We have our British values, and that means standing up against dictators. And when we see the likes of Farage fawning over Putin, it's the public's responsibility to unite and reject that fake patriotism, which I'm sure we'll see going forward.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 5 minutes to 8, so we are more or less halfway through the show. It's Easter Monday, of course. A very happy Easter to you. If you haven't enjoyed enough of it yet and you've got another day off for bank holiday, well done you. Doesn't mean you can't listen to the home of common sense. The front page of The Sun this morning, grand, bold Duke of York. Prince Andrew joined royals at their Easter church services yesterday, his first public outing in a year. Let's talk to Michael Cole, royal commentator and writer, to find out if this is the beginning of his brother Charles rehabilitating him. Could it be the case? Michael, very good morning to you. Happy Easter Monday.
Happy Easter Monday to you, Mike. Yeah, there was a full turnout. Of course, the King was there with his siblings. He had to be there as the Supreme Governor of the Church of England, of course. And here we see the Duchess of York, Sarah, Duchess of York, and she drops the lowest, the deepest curtsy I think I've ever seen when she sees the Queen, Queen Camilla. Yeah. So this was not exactly a rehabilitation of the Duke of York's position in life, far from it, because there's no possibility of that happening. But this was not a state occasion. It wasn't a royal event as such. It was a family gathering at Easter, a traditional one. And the King was there. And his younger brother also appeared. I'm quite sure he was pleased to be there. And his two daughters, Eugenie and Beatrice, were also there, along with Prince Edward, who's now the Duke of Edinburgh, of course, and his 70-year-old son, James, the Earl of Essex. So it was quite a good turnout, but not exactly a three-line whip. In the Queen's day, everybody would have been there. And, of course, notable by their absence were the Prince and Princess of Wales, William and Kate, and their children. They chose to be up in Norfolk, where the weather has been rather great lately, at Anmer Hall, having a family Christmas, presumably with Easter egg hunts and things of that kind. Yeah. And I wouldn't be at all surprised if the Middleton family also featured there.
Well, you feel like you want to ask the question whether these two events are indeed connected. You know, did they decide not to go because they knew he would be there?
I don't think it would come to that quite yet. Of course...
it's quite convenient, though, isn't it?
Yeah, yes, indeed. I think it was mainly because it's the end of the way Easter's fallen. It's the end of the school holidays, and on Wednesday the children go back to school, and I'm sure the Prince and Princess of Wales wanted to have as much time with them as possible, probably with the Middleton family. I don't know. It hasn't been confirmed whether that was true, but they have a lovely house there on the Sandringham estate, and if they can be there, why wouldn't they want to be there? Obviously, you know, for children, there's rather more interest in finding Easter eggs among the rhubarb leaves than they would be in attending matins. But there you are. There's some nice shots from, presumably, in Saola. That was a little bit late earlier, wasn't it?
It was.
Of course.
Let's have a little chat. We only got about a minute left. The Duchess of Sussex, i.e. Meghan Markle, a.k.a., plunged into a copycat row last night. A British author has apparently said she sent her a legal letter pointing out that there are so many striking similarities between Meghan's first children's TV show for Netflix and her own book.
infringement of copyright, and the lawyers say that the striking similarities could not be coincidence. Those with good memories, there we are, Pearl Power. That's written by a woman called Mel Elliott, who lives down in Hastings, and indeed has a daughter called Pearl, and that's got a heroine. That was written 7 years before the 2021 Netflix show called Pearl. That was about a young girl who finds inspiration and power from influential women from history. And very in a nice sort of way, because she followed it up with 2 personal letters. Mel Elliott, written and illustrates her book, and her little girl always looks like that, wrote 2 letters pointing out the similarities and even hoping in her own mind that she might be able to collaborate with the Duchess of Sussex. But she received no replies at all. So it's an interesting case because infringement of copyright is a serious matter, but the Sussex people did not respond in any way whatsoever.
Right. Interesting. Well, we'll keep our eyes on that one. Michael Cole, very good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Real commentator and writer there. A couple of things, says Nicola from Sussex. I can't understand how the left, way more than the right, have to seek to death threats. If you don't agree with them, they wish death upon you. The placards on Saturday were chilling. Secondly, I can't understand the Palestinian flags being present. From every video I've seen, I couldn't see any Muslims there. Is it because Muslims would never support trans people, similar to what they think about gay people? They're making themselves look utterly stupid carrying these flags. Well, of course they are, because they are utterly stupid. I mean, anyone who thinks free Palestine and trans rights are the same ought to be put in an asylum. This is Talk.
You said you don't like Polish people and you don't trust them.
That's not what I said.
Yes, that's what you said.
No. You must have misheard me. I like Polish people a lot.
Christ me, I never heard of this from you. I've heard this on the radio.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what. You want to have a listen? Have a listen to what I said. Okay. Listen to this. I don't like Poles. I wasn't talking about Polish people.
Yes.
I was talking about polls, you know, when you do a poll to find out what people think. You know, like they say 55% of people vote Remain, 45% vote Leave. That's a poll. I wasn't talking about...
but later on you said you don't trust them, so you don't...
I don't trust them. No, that's true. I don't trust polls, and I don't like polls because I don't trust them. But that's not Polish people.
No, that's what I thought. That's what I pick up.
Oh, I'm terribly sorry. Listen, well, I would never say anything like that.
No, so in this case, I never learned English.
No, listen, it's fine. It's absolutely fine. I'm very glad you called in because I wouldn't want you walking around thinking that Mike Graham is a horrible bigot. He doesn't like Polish people.
No, I was thinking, what the hell? What's going on here? Actually, I must be back and explain a few things.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
to Morning Glory. Coming up to 4 minutes past 8. We're here, of course, until 10 o'clock. Peter Cardwell sitting in for Julie Hartley-Brewer. We've got lots and lots of messages coming in. Loads of you have got plenty to say about what happened over the course of the weekend, particularly these trans demonstrations, which are quite frankly filled with people who wish ill on other people, filled with people who wish death on other people, filled with people who think that defacing statues is a good way to protest against women's rights, which they don't think apparently should exist. Seems very odd because these people actually want to be recognised as women. So once they become women, presumably, they don't think they should have any rights. It's a bit of an upside-down equation, isn't it? Morning, Mike. Am I missing something? Transgender people threatening TERFs who are also women. Does that include the women who gave birth to them? Says Sonia. Well, it's a good point. Jason in Hastings says, morning, Mike, and a happy Easter. I think Keir Starmer is currently searching the planet for a crazy doctor who will be prepared to try and fit him with a cervix so he can try and prove the Supreme Court are wrong. Anything would not surprise me anymore these days, I have to say. But the big question on the pages of the newspapers this morning, and particularly on the front page of the Daily Mail, the question I've been asking ever since last Wednesday, really, when the Supreme Court made its judgment, and that question is very firmly this. Starmer must break his silence on trans judgment, because it's now been 5 days since that ruling, and he has said absolutely nothing at all. We'll talk to Will Kingston, political commentator and host of the Fire at Will podcast. Also, we'll be bringing you lots of other stories, including a twerking civil servant who's working for the Department of Twerk and Pensions, get it? While simultaneously answering calls to pensioners, she's actually having what can only be described as X-rated conversations with a lot of people on a sort of OnlyFans type site. We'll also talk about how useless the trains are in this country. Literally no trains running up the West Coast at all, from London to Glasgow. And Ed Miliband. He's being accused of having no idea on net zero. Well, I think that's probably right. 0344 499 1000 is the number. It's 5 minutes past 8. Let's get it on. Tony from near John O'Groats up in Scotland, where he says it's warm and sunny, very nice up there today. And he says, I sense your despair that your son's journey to, or is it from Scotland, is likely to take 7 hours, huh? The Elizabethan Express travelled non-stop from King's Cross to Edinburgh in 6.5 hours every weekday in 1953. Well, it's true. I mean, when I worked at Edinburgh, I once did an exercise in how long it takes for a letter to actually get from Edinburgh to London, and that was first class. And we're talking about probably 15 or so years ago, maybe more. And it turned out that it was quicker in the 19th century. When somebody would jump on a horse with a letter and ride it down to London, than it was in something like 2009, where they had the efficiencies of planes, trains and automobiles. They got a first-class letter from Edinburgh to London quicker by horse than they did via the post office, and that's kind of where we are now with trains. I mean, if you can get from London to Glasgow in 7 hours today, you'll be doing well. I would suggest it's probably going to be more like 9 hours, because you're going to have to get a train from King's Cross, which is the wrong station. So you arrive at Euston, you have to then walk to King's Cross, you have to get on a train from there to Bedford, you have to wait for a bus to take you to Milton Keynes, which will be much longer than you ever thought it was going to be. There's an awful lot of roundabouts in Milton Keynes, and so I'm afraid you'll be taking quite a while. Then you get on a train from there to, I think it was Carlisle, where there's another bus which takes you on to Glasgow. They've said it will be about 7 hours. It will probably be more like 9. I'm afraid. But that's the state of Britain in 2025. Let's talk to Will Kingston, find out what he's up to these days. Very good morning to you, Will, and a happy Easter.
Happy Easter, Mike. I've done that trip to Glasgow incredibly hungover with those 2 bus trips in between, and I can tell you, it is not pleasant.
It really isn't. Yeah, I mean, you don't, because the buses always take longer. You know, you have to get off the train, you have to shuffle forward with a group of other people, find that your first bus is full, you wait for the second bus. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. But let's talk about the big story of the day. It's still the Supreme Court ruling about, you know, whether a woman is a woman, if it's a trans woman. The ruling's been made, but we've now got, you know, people inside the government saying they're going to try and see if they can get around it. We've got people in the NHS saying that they're going to ignore it. Keir Starmer still hasn't said anything about it. You know, it's a real problem for the Prime Minister, this.
Yeah, it is. Well, it goes to show how ideologically captured our institutions are. Unfortunately, if you thought that this ruling would mean that this problem is solved, you are mistaken, because the problem now will be in the execution. There will inevitably be the moment where a bloke who claims to be a woman will go into a female changing room at the local Fitness First and will refuse to leave. And the question is, when the police arrive, what are they going to do about it? when, Sally, aka Phil, or Phil, aka Sally, however you want to frame it, who has been playing for their particular sporting team for the last few years, refuses to be dropped. How does the local sporting authorities treat that situation? This will always be in the execution, and unfortunately, there's still, as you've seen from those Keir Starmer's MPs, a lot of people in the establishment class are very happy to flout the laws because they believe still they are morally in the right.
Yeah, isn't it funny though? Because up until this moment, the Supreme Court was held up as the great sort of the great arbiter of anything that was a problem. Because up until this moment, they've always made judgments which have been fairly kind of left of centre and anti-Tory. But every time they ever had a chance to have a go at Boris Johnson, they very much did. And every time they had a chance to have a go at the Conservative Party, they very much did. And in those days, the Labour Party thought the Supreme Court was the be-all and end-all of justice. Now Keir Starmer's got nothing to say.
Yeah, and look, I'm actually not particularly comfortable with this coming from the Supreme Court. If I had my way, we would ditch the Supreme Court entirely. I think it would be much better if you had further clarity from the legislature on this. I think if Kemi Badenoch wants an easy win or Nigel Farage wants an easy win, they say that we will just, in black and white, enshrine two sexes in law, because you do have the problem of, if you do have a couple of woke judges who manage to climb up the greasy pole of the leftist judicial branch, this could be changed very easily again when the next case inevitably comes to the Supreme Court. So I think Kemi Badenoch and Nigel Farage still can make some hay out of this.
Yeah, very possibly so. But as many people say, the Supreme Court technically does not really make law. It kind of makes clarifications on the law that is made in Parliament. So technically speaking, Starmer has the ball in his court on this one. And he should come out and back the Supreme Court, because he's always said that he supports the law. He's always said that he knows more about the law than anybody else. He always, bigs himself up as the chief prosecutor at the Crown Prosecution Service. There's nothing that he doesn't know about the law. And yet suddenly the cat's got his tongue.
Well, you can see why he doesn't, can't you? And that is, I think, because he's incredibly embarrassed. Because he doesn't have any real guiding principles or any real ideology of a conviction politician. He just went along with what all the other lefty politicians were doing in that crazy period between about 2018 and 2023, where they went along with the excesses of wokeism. I don't think he truly believed that a man could be a woman, because I don't think anyone truly believes that a man can be a woman. Even the trans activists in their heart of hearts know that stuff. But he certainly knows that, but he went along with it because he thought that was politically expedient. And now he has egg on his face. And so I can see why he is not willing to go out and say something. But you're right. He just needs to fall back on that, quite annoying thing that he always does, and says, this has now brought us clarity and I will follow the laws of the land and all that sort of stuff. So I actually would have thought it's an easy out for him. But
well, you would have thought so, but he's obviously too frightened to say it. We've got a little montage of what he said in the past, and this is worth watching, actually.
Trans rights are human rights. Trans rights are human rights. Trans rights are human rights, and I support the right to self-identification. I think we need to respect the right to self-identify, and we're committed to updating the GRA to introduce self-declaration for trans people.
We don't think that self-identification is the right way forward.
Is it transphobic to say only women have a cervix?
Well, it is something that shouldn't be said. It is not right.
Is it right or is it wrong for Rosie Duffield to say only women have a cervix?
Well, look, biologically, she, of course, is right about that. Trans rights are human rights. Trans rights are human rights. We've also got to stand up here for trans rights and take that fight on.
That a transgender woman is a woman and should be allowed on a female ward. What if one of them was sitting here and said that to you, what would be your response?
Well, I disagree. I disagree.
So trans rights are human rights, but he wouldn't let a trans woman on a female ward in a hospital. And also, what's all this about, the cervix? This is something that should not be said. So what is he now, the arbiter of what you can say?
Yeah, well, it goes back to the leftist trope that words are violence, or that somehow,
especially when you say especially when you say kill J.K. Rowling, but you don't get arrested for it.
Well, this is the thing, right? And I saw that protest over the weekend, and we come back to it. Two-tier policing is a real thing in this country. There were several placards out there that were saying kill J.K. Rowling. There were several placards that were meeting, I think, the same sort of threshold for stirring up some sort of hatred as what we saw in the riots last year. And yet we have people languishing in prison for that. And because these people are lockstep with the judicial and policing establishment, they get away scot-free. It is not a myth to say that two-tier policing based off ideology is a thing in this country. It is there in front of your face.
It really is. It's not difficult, is it? Because he hasn't said anything. We've managed to find something that Rachel Reeves said about that Supreme Court decision. This was when she was still visiting British Steel up in Scunthorpe last week.
I welcome the decision by the court to give clarity to women, but also give clarity to service providers going forward, and we welcome that judgment.
When will you be giving that clarity and issuing new guidance on how to apply it in places like hospitals?
Well, the EHRC will be giving that guidance, and they will set that out in due course, but this now gives the clarity that's needed to move forward.
The clarity that's needed to move forward. A woman is a woman. There you go. How difficult was that?
A little insight for you, Mike. I was chatting to a girl on Hinge, which is the dating app last
sure she was a
week.
girl?
That's a good question. I haven't had the first date yet, so we'll see. But she worked in the press office for the Blob in the civil service in Whitehall. And I'll say it must have been a tough day on Thursday, crisscrossing around the country, trying to say that the Labor Party all along actually didn't believe that a man could be a woman.
Yeah.
And she gave me those exact words. She said, "We've just been told it will provide much needed clarity for us going forward." And so it's interesting to see how these words just get spun up somewhere deep in the recesses. And then they get spewed out by people like Rachel Reeves without any thought.
Just extraordinary, isn't it? Incredible stuff. Well, we wait and see whether day 6 will bring us any more clarity from Keir Starmer. Let me ask you about another story that's just off to the side a little bit. This is on the front page of the Telegraph. Britain has weeks to escape new powers, allowing the World Health Organization to recommend imposing lockdowns in future pandemics. So a group of MPs and peers have spotted this and gone, we have to avoid signing this or we have to opt out of it by July the 19th to avoid becoming sort of locked in by the World Health Organization to behave in a particular way if they tell us to. Suella Braverman is warning that the regulation present the most serious threat to national sovereignty in a generation. This has all gone a bit below the radar, hasn't it?
I remember reading about this last year, and then people just forgot to talk about it because I think people still just want to ignore COVID as much as possible.
Yeah.
It's just too painful just to go back on. But this is as clear a demonstration as you can see that we need to get out of the WHO as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
It will be an abrogation of our sovereignty. But also, there's also the excesses of the amount of money that goes into silly woke health initiatives around the world.
Right.
But the biggest thing is they don't deserve our membership. The way that they kowtowed to China, the way that they showed this moral cowardice where we didn't have the ability to be able to really press China on what is obviously now a virus that has come from a lab there. They don't deserve our membership. And this would be a disaster if we were to give away our sovereignty further to a politically jeopardised organisation.
And also, we still give them a bucket load of money, don't we?
And that. And again, the sad reality is a lot of that money does go to causes that I think the average person on the street would just think are silly. They're not just going to help, malaria in Africa. They are going to ideological causes, like a lot of trans stuff still to this day.
Yeah.
And so I think there is better ways that we can spend our money in the health realm than putting it through the WHO, globalist coffers.
Absolutely. The letter has been sent to the Foreign Office and signed by 14 different parliamentarians, including Danny Kruger and Ian Duncan-Smith and Esther McVeigh from the Tory party, Labour's Graham Stringer, DUP's Sammy Wilson and former Reform MP Rupert Lowe. Also, Lord Frost has signed it as well. We'll keep an eye on this story.
Why only 14? Why only 14?
Well, I don't know. The answer to that.
The Conservatives, pull your finger out.
Yeah, I know. I think we need to give it a bit more of an airing, this story, but we'll see if we can build up a bit more resilience to it. But listen, Will, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Will Kingston, political commentator, host, of course, of the Fire at Will podcast. Paul in Fife quite rightly asking this question. What's the difference between someone holding a placard saying kill J.K. Rowling and what Lucy Connolly put out on social media? She's doing 3 years in the jail. Well, exactly. And one here from Steve in Sussex. Those idiot trans nutters shouting queers for Palestine. Do they not realise what would happen to queers in Palestine? Why do people avoid deportation when saying their homosexuality would act against them? Well, I mean, these people are literally complete and utter nutcases. One from Steve in Yatton in Somerset. I'd like to suggest a new attraction at the Bedfordshire theme park. They can have a room with 99 women in it and 1 trans, and you would have 3 chances to identify which one is a man. Thanks, Mike. Yeah, that could work. What would you call it, though? What would you call that room? Howard Klein says, in the past, Simon's Pictures would take complex satellite uplinks in a crew of 4 and a bill of 50,000 quid, says Howard, about Simon Calder's really, really crystal clear picture from a boat in Croatia. Well, I remember when I went there for the war and I had to take a satellite phone, which was about the size of a small Mini. Unbelievable. And that was back in the sort of 90s. It's 19 minutes past 8. Loads more coming up.
One struggle, one fight, Palestine trans rights. One struggle, one fight, Palestine trans rights. One struggle, one fight, Palestine trans rights.
I suggest they go to Palestine and see if Palestinian trans rights exist.
Yeah, indeed, I don't think Hamas are great fans of trans rights.
No.
It's not high up on their agenda.
What does that show to you about their grasp of detail?
I mean, there's just absolutely no grasp at all.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. Coming up to 23 minutes past 8. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock. Peter Cardwell sitting in for Judy Hartley-Brewer this morning. It is Bank Holiday Monday. It is Easter Monday. Hope you're enjoying it. The weather doesn't look too clever, I'm afraid, but never mind. We're going to talk to Andrew Orlovsky coming up, business correspondent, columnist indeed at The Telegraph. Let's get a voice note from Ben in Prague.
Good morning, Mike. Happy Easter. This is Ben in Prague. I've just heard a quick news story, which I just find hypocritical and amazing. There's people trying to stop Donald Trump addressing the Houses of Parliament because he's a liar and he's shown disrespect to Britain. That's funny because our Prime Minister does that every single day. Far more than Donald Trump has done towards this country. I bet they're not calling for him to be banned from Parliament every day. Be good if he did, so we didn't have to hear his awful bloody voice.
It's a very good point, Ben. Very well made. You're absolutely right, of course. He does, without any question, shadow of a doubt. He does tell lies all the time. Keeps telling us he's putting money back into the pockets of working people. Keeps talking about fixing the foundations and telling us that we're going to generate growth, and keeping the borders safe and keeping the people of this country safe and clamping down on crime on the streets. All lies, because none of it's happening at all. Jay Good says this: I've just looked online and used this thing called a journey planner. This is going to be good, this. He says, and you can get a train from London to Glasgow in about 5.5 hours today. Really? And that would involve getting on how many buses exactly, Jay Good? If you ever travelled north of London, you would know that it's very nice to travel to Glasgow on a train, but you won't get there today in about 5.5 hours, no matter what your journey planner tells you, because I'm afraid you have to keep stopping and getting off the train to get on a bus, which takes you to another station where you get on another train. And if you've ever done that, you'll know that it is an incredible, ridiculous and complicated scenario. He says, why was your son booked from Euston when the disruptions have been known for months? And he would have been told. Well, he wasn't told. And you go from Euston to Manchester, it's called the Avanti West Coast Line. And on Friday, they had trains. But on Saturday, Sunday and Monday, there are no trains. Why? Because they don't know how to run the railway. Simple as that. Let's talk to Andrew Orlovsky, business columnist at The Telegraph. Andrew, very good morning to you.
Always a pleasure to be on, Mike.
Good to see you. I've got to start with Rachel Reeves' trip to Washington tomorrow. She's apparently heading over for trade negotiations. Does this mean that Jonathan Reynolds, the Secretary of State for Trade and Industry, is too busy running British Steel now?
Well, maybe they've all got their work cut out keeping the lights on.
You would wonder. You would wonder. But what is she going to achieve in America?
I'm a big supporter of free trade, but the question is, when you fly back home, who have you thrown under the bus? Is it the farmers? Is it another group? Sometimes it makes sense to do that, as it did, in 1850 when the tariffs were repealed and we all had cheaper bread.
Yeah.
I don't think it's quite so clear cut now. I think we should conduct this in the national interest, as everybody else in the world does.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, Donald Trump's made a big thing of having people come to visit him. Last week we had Georgia Maloney. They obviously share a great deal of sort of what you might call commonsensical approaches to all sorts of policies, including immigration. Quite a lot of good chemistry between them. I'm not sure if she's going to meet Trump, but if she does, I dread to think of the sort of the chemistry between the two of them, because she's about as wooden as Keir Starmer is.
Yeah, she's an interesting character. I think she's much more pragmatic than people give her credit for. I mean, she's, it's a centre-right, cultural conservative government, which shouldn't be shocking in any other era, whether you agree with it or not.
Yeah, no, it's true. I just find both her and Starmer have a similar kind of way of speaking. They have a similar way of acting. They don't like to use the words that they would like to say. They sort of like to use this kind of, what I call government speak. Lots of moving forwards and lots of clarifications and lots of, in the fullness of times. It's like an episode of Yes Minister watching them.
Yeah, well, he's a lawyer and she's just being diplomatic. I think that's the difference.
Yes, but unfortunately, being a lawyer doesn't help him in this instance, because the law doesn't really help you when it comes to trade negotiations. There are no laws that you can put in that make it easier or more difficult, really.
Well, actually, there are, but nobody plays by them, and China hasn't played by them.
Well, that's kind of what I meant. I mean, the law might apply in your country, but it doesn't apply to anybody else.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that Keir Starmer, as somebody who thinks that international law is the supreme, arbiter of what's wrong and right, is selling out British copyright, which will put it in breach of international law. It's the only country that's doing it.
Right.
Alarm bells should be going off there.
They should. You wrote a piece talking about alarm bells a bit earlier on over the weekend about this horizon all over again, the return of digital ID, sparking security concerns. I was reading this morning that we should be more concerned perhaps about parks and bushes in St James's Park and around Westminster, where the Chinese have apparently put all sorts of bugs. But tell us about this one login system.
Yeah, I've been working with a whistleblower for a few weeks now, who's a very senior civil servant on this project, which is successor to digital ID. So the internal code name is digital identity, and this is the login system which 3 million of us already use.
Right.
But the government wants to extend it to taxed, HMRC, which already has its login, which works really well, and pensions and almost every other service, except the NHS, but everything else should go through the system. And a whistleblower found that the people in charge had really lost control of the project. It's burnt through £300 million. They even paid for a public relations agency. There was work going on in Romania, which the management didn't even know about.
Right.
Now, this was a very insecure system that processes our personal information. You upload your passport, it checks who you are, who you say you are, and then you have a digital identity, and the government will use this as a login for everything else.
Right.
Is it secure now? I'm not so sure. That this is not what we're hearing, and if you read between the lines, the GDS says, which is developing this service, says we're not quite conformant with good practice.
Right. And the problem that we know about is that their personal data is incredibly valuable now, and whether you can protect it or not should be absolutely front and centre of anything like this that you do. But even just a throwaway remark of yours there, that they've spent 300 million quid on it, you mean, well, what have they spent that on? I mean, how does it cost that much money? What have they done?
Well, it's incredible. It's not just that, Mike. It's the day it was announced, they scrapped another identity system that burnt through about £250 million, and there was nothing to show for it.
Right.
So getting towards £600 million on identity systems that either aren't being used,
right,
or questionable whether we can trust.
And what's the National Audit Office doing about stuff like this? Surely they should be all over that like a rash. They should be going home. You've spent in excess of 500 million quid and you've got nothing to show me. You know, who's in charge of the clattering train?
Well, the problem is Peter Kyle has pinned a lot of hopes on this. Now, I've known a lot of science ministers come and go, and they love the job. They love being photographed all over. The variety of British science is amazing, but Peter Kyle only seems interested in two things: AI and digital government.
Yeah.
This is absolutely, like, this one login identity project is absolutely key to it. So is he going to do the right thing by us and stop it and make sure it's secure so people can, as parliamentarians have already called for, or is he just going to keep going? But it's a tough choice.
And of course, there are going to be plenty of people in this country, and we know who they are, who are not going to have ID, who are not going to have the ability to sign up to the stuff, and will still be languishing in the black market, whether they be, illegal immigrants or whether they be criminals who've decided to opt out of the kind of the mainframe and the matrix. You know, what do we do about them?
Well, this is it. I mean, I keep hearing digital identities advanced as a way of clamping down on immigration fraud. Well, what happens if you have no documents and you shut through the system? Eventually, the Home Office will give you a piece of paper saying, "I am whoever I say I am." That's a piece of paper. It doesn't matter if it's plastic or a digital identity. The identity is still made up.
Yeah, right. If you can't, they can't prove who you're not, and you can't prove who you are. Where do we go from there?
Well, exactly. I mean, I think because politicians are really poor at thinking about things and explaining trying to persuade us, they've all been seduced by technology. Now it's AI will fix everything, which is absurd. Or digital identities. Like even during COVID, I noticed there were pressure from Tony Blair Institute, which has never given up on this. It's like a religious belief. To extend a vaccine card into a digital identity. It wasn't a conspiracy. It's like some people, I put it down to not when the French decimalised time, they 10-day weeks and they did a 10-hour day. It's just that kind of neatness, the bureaucratic desire for order, which doesn't make our lives any better necessarily.
No.
Make them worse if hackers have got hold of our identity. But we always think technology will fix everything.
Yeah, they do. And unfortunately, every time they do that, they get proved wrong. But there we are. Great to talk to you. Andrew, thank you very much indeed. Andrew Orlovsky there, business columnist at The Telegraph. Chantel's back. Let's have another voice note.
Morning, Mike. Chantel from Brackley here again. I went to the P for Palestine Net Zero Orange Man Bad Rights March. Mike, they turfed me out because I forgot my gender recognition certificate proving I'm a woman. Now, I admit I'm known to Dean Dorries. But what's going on, Mike?
It's not fair, is it? Absolutely unbelievable. You should have just worn a T-shirt that said Free Palestine on it. You'd have been fine. You know, that gets you into a trans process because, as we know, and we can illustrate it here, it's one fight, isn't it?
One struggle, one fight, Palestine trans rights. 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 One struggle, one fight.
Sounds American, that guy, doesn't he? I think he's American. What's he doing here? Yeah, better get Keir Starmer along. What are you doing here? I'm here for the church service, Prime Minister. What are you doing? And we're in the Easter Garden. What's that? I mean, you know, list goes on, doesn't it? 8:34, we're going to talk net zero with Andrew Montford coming next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. This from Julie from Stamford. Morning, Mike. Great show. Thanks for the car sticker, now in pride of place. Thanks for the picture. Incidentally, I wonder how many of these protesters have daughters or granddaughters, even little sisters. They may change their tune if a large, hairy, bearded man came into the changing room to try on a bra where the young girl was having her first bra fitting. It's complete madness and needs to stop now. Julie, I think so many people would agree with you. These idiot trans women are out on the streets protesting against women's rights, but then they want to be recognised as women. Go figure, says Paul. And one from Mark in Caterham. Ever noticed these marches always seem to be sponsored by various trade unions? Union banners clearly on display at the weekend. The great unwashed gathering en masse. Yeah, I mean, there was I think the leader of one of the student unions or one of the university unions was out in force at one of these marches, and she actually tweeted out a picture that said, "Hate will never win." And in the various pictures around the tweet that she put out was somebody holding up a banner saying, you know, the only good turf is a dead turf. And that was underneath her banner, "Hate will never win." Let's get a voice note from Damon.
Good morning, Mike. Damon from Wigan. Just a quick story for you. Back in 2021, I went to see my children for the first time after my divorce. Usually it takes me an hour from Wigan to Wolverhampton, where my children live. On this particular day in December, the first 4 trains I was supposed to get from Wigan train station were cancelled, and the bus service was put on to Manchester, then on to Crewe, then on to Wolverhampton, back. So an hour's journey on that day took me 19 hours because I left my flat at 6 a.m. and didn't return back until 2:30 a.m. the day after. Cheers, mate.
Deary God. Damon, listen, that's just the way it works, right? Jay Gould, the bloke who thinks the journey planner tells the truth, needs to know about this. He's now put a tweet out saying Mike's kids are obviously as dim as he is. It's a bit harsh. They're as bright as I am, actually, but what they do know is that you don't believe a word the bleeding railway timetable tells you, because if you do, you'll be standing at a lot of platforms for a long time, freezing your nuts off, being a complete plank. Let's talk to Andrew Montford, director of Net Zero Watch, because let's face it, after all, it's been a big weekend for Ed Miliband. He got a piece in the paper. That's right, he wrote a piece for The Observer, in which he basically broadcast a whole barrage of lies to the general public about what he was doing. not least saying that GB Energy was creating a marvellous sort of situation for everybody to get cheaper energy, not least not aligning himself with the view that actually gas prices are falling, oil prices are falling, and yet our electricity prices are still going up, which he says is down to fossil fuels when it clearly isn't. And then he said a load of schools in London are going to have reduced electricity bills because they're spending £2.6 million of not government money, of taxpayers' money, to put a load of solar panels on the roofs. I mean, I don't know how he gets away with it. Andrew, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
I mean, how does he get away with it? It's all cobblers, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, part of the problem is that there's so few people in the media questioning him, present company accepted. Yeah. That he does tend to get away with it. He really has a cheek to say some of these things. I mean, he was going on about Richard Tice, saying that Richard Tice was lying about net zero. I mean, Ed Miliband and his energy department are the biggest source of disinformation on the net zero in the country. I mean, Ed Miliband actually, he's gone out of his way to make sure that the truth never comes out. Right. If you go back to Claire Coutinho's time under the Conservatives as energy minister, she actually commissioned a full costing of net zero. First thing Ed Miliband did when he got in power was to cancel it. Right. He just doesn't want people to know the truth.
No, because the truth would finish him off for good politically, because the truth is that net zero is unaffordable, unachievable and completely unworkable. Apart from that, it's a great idea.
Absolutely. I mean, we're feeling the pain already, aren't we? Yeah. Bills are going up, and he's trying to kid on that it's something to do with gas, but the truth is that the gas price has returned almost to where it was before the crisis. The big thing that's making your bills go up is subsidies to wind farms and solar farms, and the cost of expanding the grid to accommodate them. That's a much bigger factor. It's probably 3 times as much as anything that the gas price has done to your bills. So he's lying. And he needs to be called out on it. So, well done you, Mike, for sort of, banging on about it.
I mean, I will.
Getting the truth out there.
Yeah, I mean, I will continue to do so because, I don't mind politicians having different ideas to me. I don't mind if they wish to have a different political agenda to me. But I do mind when they start just telling lies and using wrong information and, shall we say, at the very least, very heavily edited information to try and make their point when it's clearly disingenuous and it's not true. I just won't have it.
Yeah, no, quite right too. And yeah, you and I think just need to keep going on this. He is on the back foot, isn't he?
Yeah.
I think there are rumours circulating that Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves are pretty unhappy because I think the public perception is that Ed Miliband is a bit of a madman and he's leading us to a very, very dark place.
Yes.
And if we're going to get growth back, Ed Miliband is going to have to go. He is probably the major barrier to growth in the UK. If he goes and you put in somebody sane there, I don't know whether there is anybody sane in the Labour Party, but there must be somebody.
Yeah.
Then we can start getting back to growth. But it's not going to happen with Ed Miliband at the tiller.
No. I mean, people say to me that one of the reasons Keir Starmer is kind of, caught like a rabbit in the headlights is because Ed Miliband, and they say this now quite openly, Ed Miliband and Angela Rayner are kind of untouchables because they represent the left of the party. And he's obviously terrified of the left of the party, which is why he stayed silent on this whole trans debate. He doesn't want to say anything about the Supreme Court ruling, even though, he loves a legal framework. He loves a law until he doesn't. And so people believe that he's too scared to get rid of Ed Miliband because apparently the left love him.
I think that's probably right. I mean, I think the left is still extremely powerful in the Labour Party. And it'll be interesting to see after the local elections whether they retain that strength or whether the feeling will change that if there is a Labour wipeout, as seems quite possible, then I think Labour is going to have to take a long, hard look at itself and say, can we carry on down this crazy road with our electricity prices going ever upwards? And, they are going up again, aren't they? They are going to have to sort of say, OK, we're going to need to change tack. You can see the unions who, again, they're pretty hard left, but they are also getting nervous about this. They are sort of asking questions about the North Sea now, and manufacturing industry must be terrified that
Well,
they're
exactly.
going to be out of a
Well,
job
one
soon.
of the reasons we know, for example, that British Steel as an entity will probably fall into the sea is because they basically can't afford their electricity bill. You know, £700,000 a day, I think, is currently what it's costing them to run the business, because the electricity is that expensive, and that will end up having a knock-on effect where people can open factories and warehouses in France, in Germany, where the electricity bill is a third or less than half of what they're paying.
Absolutely right.
You know? So why would you run a business here?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and there's this crazy idea that we're going to stop making steel in blast furnaces, powered by coking coal, and we're going to move to arc furnaces driven by electricity. We have the most expensive electricity in the Western world. It's a non-starter. It's just not going to happen.
And have you noticed as well how they've stopped using the words coking coal or coal, and they call it raw materials? They talk about, oh, we're going to bring some raw materials in to keep the steelworks going. And you go, just call it coal. But they don't want to call it coal because it remind everybody that they shut down the coal mine in Cumbria that could have supplied the coal. And I had James Murray on, from the Exchequer, Rachel Reeves' deputy, effectively, or one of them, who told a blatant lie to me when he said that, oh, yeah, well, sorry, we couldn't have used that Cumbrian coal because it's the wrong kind of coal, which is complete rubbish.
Yeah, I mean, this has been confirmed quite widely now, I think, hasn't it? That was another lie. That they apparently it has relatively high sulfur content, which meant you couldn't use it on its own, but you were going to blend it with other types of coal, and it would be absolutely fine. And apparently, this is what they do all the time. They blend different types of coal to give it exactly the right characteristics. So yeah, load of nonsense. But they keep on with these myths. This is the problem we have, is the people running the country are not serious.
No.
It's been said before, they're kind of more like student politicians than real politicians. They want to virtue signal rather than thinking deeply and seriously about policy and fixing the problems that face the country. And
they think if they don't mention it, we'll just forget about it. Don't mention the coal. They'll just keep calling it, and after a while they'll forget that it's coal. And actually, to a point, they have won that, because with the media now, particularly kind of some of the television broadcast media, they have such short attention spans. If the Labour government says, no, look over here, there's something over here to look at, they just go over there and they never come back and ask the question again.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you like, much of the mainstream media, the BBC and ITV and Channel 4 and things, we will look back on their performance over the sort of the last 20, 30 years and just say they have been an utter disgrace. They have essentially tried to silence any dissent on global warming, climate, energy, renewables. They just won't allow the questions to be asked on air. And this is absolutely shameful. And I hope that it leads to the end of the BBC and the licence fee, because they deserve that as punishment for what they've done. I mean, they've done bad things to this country.
They totally do. You're absolutely right. And Nigel Farage this weekend said, net zero is the new Brexit. And I think when it comes to the media coverage of it, it absolutely is.
Yeah, I think it is very much the same thing with the BBC, either silencing one side of the debate or just going out of their way to demonise them and trying to sort of other them, and it is pretty disgraceful. I mean, Net Zero Watch and our friends at GWPF are the main voices of scepticism. We never get on the BBC. We're never allowed to put the case against net zero, and I don't suppose we ever will be in the future either. We are just beyond the pale, if you like, and it is disgraceful by the BBC.
It really is, particularly since you pay for their existence, which is really what quite irks an awful lot of people. But Andrew, listen, we'll carry on the good fight here. Don't worry, we're overtaking with every single day that we operate. Andrew Montford, director at Net Zero Watch. Ken Taylor, on the subject of Baroness Hayter, he says Baroness Hayter spoke a lot of sense on women's rights and idiot protesters, and was very much showing her true colours in the stop chattering about things that are uncomfortable for Labour type issues, though. Andy from Nott says, I don't think I've ever said this before, Baroness Hayter, a Labour peer, is okay, pretty sensible, pretty much common sense. She's in the wrong party. But Nan in Wales says, Mike, clearly Baroness Hayter is also a Trump hater. That was clear in her replies to you. I guess the clue's in the name. What a plank. This is, of course, on the story that I put to her, that Labour peers and some MPs as well were trying to make it absolutely and utterly copper-bottomed and sealed shut that Donald Trump will not be allowed, as the 47th President of the United States of America, to speak to a joint session of Parliament, as other previous presidents of the United States of America have been allowed to do. To wit, Barack Obama, who was certainly allowed to do it some years ago. And surely if you're going to offer a state visit to Donald Trump and he's going to come to see King Charles, surely you would invite him, would you not, to make an address to Parliament? Why wouldn't you? And if you don't do it, and if it's seen to be something the Labour government have blocked, the Labour Party have blocked, then he's not exactly going to be that friendly towards Keir Starmer's view of the world, is he? I wouldn't have thought so. Let's get a voice note from Russell.
Good morning, Michael. Great show as always. I was in London on Saturday, crossing over at Tooley Street, and pressed the button for the Pelican crossing, and all the traffic stopped, including the bicycles, which I hasten to say. Apart from one bicycle, which was extremely funny, went crashing into the back of another one, and boy, was there some words. I laughed like an absolute drain that day. Great show, Mike. Take care.
Brilliant. That is very funny. It's good to see that, isn't it? It always makes you smile of a morning or of an afternoon. Cyclists arguing with each other because they bumped into each other because they're not very careful on the roads. Trev from Boston says there's absolutely no way Donald Trump on his state visit here will be allowed to address Parliament, as it will go against everything the Labour Party believes in. And on the subject of Keir Starmer's silence, Margaret says this: two-tier Keir will say nothing. It's been 5 days, and how many arrests made about the people damaging the statue and the threats? Well, apparently the police are looking for 7 of these so-called transgender activists, right? Well, if they just arrested them at the time, they wouldn't be looking for them. They wouldn't have to ask who they were. They could have just said, thank you very much indeed, please come with us, and take their fingerprints, identify them, release them on police bail, and see you later. How is that complicated? Do you really think that some kind of violent mob of trans demonstrators are going to somehow ram New Scotland Yard and take over the police? I know they're very violent people, but surely to God the police need to get better at this, don't they? They've had enough practice over the years. I mean, London at the weekends is now demonstration central, for heaven's sake. It's 10 minutes to 9. Donald Trump apparently has said this morning that hopefully Russia and Ukraine will make a peace deal this week. We'll find out from Cormac Smith what's going on.
So here's an Easter egg with the word... Oh, hang on. Oh, no. They've left the word Easter out.
It's on the top.
Can you see that?
It's on.
Why?
They're hiding it.
They've got it up there.
They've hidden it.
But why isn't it on the front? It just says Cadbury's cream egg. Doesn't say anything about Easter. So I may have to stop buying Cadbury's chocolate, which I was probably keeping their company afloat.
It's American now anyway, since Peter Mandelson sold it for
It's not an Eid egg.
UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 8:53. Ed Miliband thinks he can lie on electricity prices, says Rollo. But at the internet we can sees quite clearly what is happening in every other world market. Yet again, note how the BBC does not point this out. Thank goodness for Talk and you calling this out. Bravo. It's true. You know, they never want to point out the fact that actually Ed Miliband's lies are just what they are, lies, complete and utter lies, barefaced ones, by the way. He says things which he knows not to be true. Always speak the truth about Miliband's dangerous madness of net zero, says John. While he is in post, our energy is under threat. He has to go. I hope this madness brings down the Starmer government. Well, there's so many things that could bring it down, honestly. Anything. From this trans row to net zero to all manner of different scandals that have been going on. You know, it's an incredible situation. Cormac Smith is here, former Ukraine Foreign Minister's advisor, of course. A little bit of breaking news this morning. US President Donald Trump said hopefully Russia and Ukraine will make a deal this week. Just the other day, Cormac, very good morning to you. Happy Easter.
Happy Easter to you too, Mike.
He was saying that he might just pull out of any kind of peace deal if there wasn't some kind of progress made. Is this Donald Trump playing the art of the deal again?
I think it's Donald Trump playing games again, and it's very, very hard to know where this goes. From what we know of it, this is a very bad deal for Ukraine. I would also say that this is not the result of a genuine negotiation. This is a proposal which has been put to Ukraine by the Americans, which I would say seems to be, from what we know of it, seems to very much favor the Russian position. There is talk of America recognizing Crimea. Now, just because America recognizes Crimea as part of Russia, Ukraine never will, and nobody else in what I call the democratic or the civilized world should.
Yes.
There's also, of course, talk about a guarantee that Ukraine can never join NATO. Well, look, nobody can make that rule in perpetuity. Certainly, there is no prospect of Ukraine joining NATO at the moment until the war is over. And while certainly the Trump administration can rule it out for as long as they are in power, that cannot be a guarantee in perpetuity. But the other thing, of course, we really at the moment do not know if NATO is going to continue in its current form, because there is serious and credible fears that America may decide to pull out of NATO altogether.
Yeah, I mean, again, we don't really know and have no way of knowing, do we, what Trump really wants to do here. I mean, until the end comes, you kind of don't know exactly where he's going for. I mean, it seems clear that he would like to get some kind of monetary benefit out of Ukraine if there is a deal of any kind, doesn't it?
I think Trump wants to get some monetary benefit, hence the minerals deal, which has rolled on for some time. And there was a preparatory document signed during the week. It wasn't the final deal, but it was certainly a step on the way to the deal, which the Ukrainians seem to be a little bit more happy with. But I think, my view is Donald Trump, I really don't care. I really don't think Donald Trump cares a lot about the killing. I think he wants two things. I think he wants monetary return for the United States, and he wants to get this war out of the way. And he has made it very, very clear so he can get back to normal trading with Russia. And he has already talked about himself, about the US and Russia dividing up the European market to sell their oil and gas to.
Yeah.
So I think nobody knows what goes on inside Donald Trump's head, but that is my assessment, Mike.
Yes, indeed. Just going to break off for a second. Some breaking news just coming out from the Vatican now. Pope Francis, the first Latin American leader of the Roman Catholic Church, has died. The Vatican said in a video statement this Easter Monday. He was 88 and had suffered various ailments in his 12-year papacy. Sad news today. He obviously hasn't been very well. He came out of hospital after a lengthy stay, which he was described as being close to death on a couple of occasions, suffering from quite a serious bout of pneumonia. He was seen over the weekend out in public. This is J.D. Vance meeting the Pope, I think, just a few days ago in Rome, obviously in the Vatican. He'll be... yesterday, I'm sorry, this was just yesterday. He was putting out on his social media. The Pope clearly not himself. There he was waving to the crowds yesterday, but the news this morning is that the Pope has indeed passed away at the age of 88. He has suffered from various ailments in his 12-year papacy. We'll have a look at that story in a bit further detail coming up a little bit later on in the show. We're here, of course, until 9 o'clock. Cormac, sorry, I'm going to have to let you go. Cormac Smith, former Ukraine Foreign Ministerial Advisor. Lots of you have still got plenty to say. Lots of you have got things to talk about when it comes to this trans debate. Many of you have sent me some great messages. Let me just go through a few of them. Ed from Ayr says this: so Labour ignore court rulings they don't agree with, like women's rights, but they bow down to the ECHR regarding the boat invaders. It just shows politicians are hypocritical garbage. And Brian says, Mike, regarding the trans rights protests and the chants, Palestinian trans rights, may I suggest a fundraiser to send these idiots to Gaza one way? And Gary says, Mike, isn't it obvious what you would call a game where you have 99 women in a room with one man and you have 3 chances to identify the man? It's a spot the balls competition. Yeah, very good, Gary. Thanks very much indeed for lowering the tone. And one from Anna, sorry, in Surrey. Help, I live in Rushmore Borough. It's filthy and we now have rats despite paying £3,000 a year council tax. Our Labour MP, Alex Baker, doesn't respond to emails. What can we do? Well, I'll tell you what, we'll have a look into that, Anna. I'm not sure where Rushmore Borough is. Can you let us know? And we will investigate, absolutely. Coming up in the next hour, more on that breaking news about the Pope. And we'll speak to Scarlett Maguire, pollster, about reform. Good evening and welcome to Plank of the Week. It's the one show where you do not have to be worried about judgmental people because we'll do all the judging for you. Let's just have a look at how Humphrey Useless is now spending his time.
There goes your career, mate.
Over there a bit is over towards where all the migrants come in. He's jumping there. There he goes. He goes over the bar. Hello, and unfortunately, it catches on his Johnson.
If he's Plank of the Week, he's got a sizable plank.
That's a whole different show.
Plank of the Week, Fridays at 7 on Talk.
Hi, I'm Kevin O'Sullivan, and I've got a message for you. Welcome back to this blockbuster edition of What Just Happened. It really is a good one, I think. It's so funny that people keep calling me Meghan Markle, because it's Meghan Sussex now.
Flynn has said, Samara, I agree with you all the time, but you're just boring. Oh my God.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 3 minutes past 9. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock. Peter Cardwell taking over then in for Julie Hartley-Brewer. The breaking news this morning, Pope Francis, the first Latin American leader of the Roman Catholic Church, has died. The Vatican said in a video statement on Monday morning. He was 88 and had suffered various ailments in his 12-year papacy, most recently suffering from a pneumonia, which caused him to be hospitalised for several days, at some points being said to have been very, very close to death. We saw him out in public only yesterday. You can look at those pictures here. He met with J.D. Vance, the deputy, the vice president, I should say, to Donald Trump just the other day. Only yesterday, I think, as well. Obviously, there were fears for him after he did appear yesterday. He didn't look particularly healthy. He didn't look particularly well. And at the age of 88, obviously, he succumbed to the various illnesses that he was suffering from. We'll get more on that as it comes in throughout the course of the hour. Meanwhile, we'll continue talking about the main story of the day. Keir Starmer must break his silence on trans judgment. We said it 5 days ago. The Daily Mail has now picked up on it, saying it's 5 days since the Supreme Court ruled that a trans woman is not a woman, and the only kind of woman is the kind who was born as a biological woman. There's been demonstrations over the weekend, some protests with some very violent undertones, an awful lot of chanting of violence and chanting of death to J.K. Rowling, that kind of thing. Clearly breaching what you might call public order, clearly breaching incitement to violence rules, certainly at least equal to the sorts of thing that Lucy Connolly's been locked up for 3 years for, practically. But so far, the police simply investigating, trying to find some people who might have caused some criminal damage to a statue and who might have been holding up placards that could have been conceived or perceived to be violent. But, of course, they didn't do it at the time, as it's been suggested. Maybe if they'd arrested them yesterday and the day before when they were demonstrating, that would have been a help. But no, the police don't do that. Because why? Well, because we suffer from two-tier justice. Coming up in this hour, Scarlett Maguire is going to join us, pollster, founder of Merlin Strategy. We'll get from her why it is that Reform are riding quite so high in the polls. Apparently, according to one poll that came out yesterday, if there was an election tomorrow, they would win the majority of seats in Parliament, or at least the biggest number of seats in Parliament. Not quite the same thing. Extraordinary times we're living in. Also, we're talking about the fact there's no trains going from London to Glasgow today. All sorts of replacement bus services going on, which will take hours and hours and hours. Net Zero and Ed Miliband in the limelight as well, because, of course, it turns out that he's being accused of all kinds of lies about trying to go for his net zero. We'll bring you that. Plus, much more. Beer prices are going up, so over £5 a pint on average, by the way, as well. It's 5 minutes past 9. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. Elsa says this: I now get Starmer, Mike. Good morning. Not only does he reverse policies at the drop of a hat, he changes opinion to suit whoever he's talking to. Are we sure he's not a robot? Well, I'm not sure you can say you're sure he's not a robot. Happy Easter, Mike, says Kay in Suffolk. Will Rachel Reeves be doing a deal with the US for rat traps to help Birmingham Council? The big story, of course, is when will Keir Starmer break his silence about this trans debate? When will he acknowledge that the decision that was made by the Supreme Court just last week is in fact now the law, which he so very much is behind? Let's, before we talk to Scarlett Maguire, just have a look at what he was doing, the most recent thing he was doing, and that was yesterday when he went to a church in Bedfordshire.
Oh my, look at this. For you, Prime Minister. Thank you very much. Thank you for welcoming me. I mean, this is what the church is so important about, isn't it? I'm a stranger, I've not been in your church before, and already I feel I know you, and you've welcomed me in. But that in itself is part and parcel of what you do, what communities do across the whole country.
Have a great Easter.
Thank you very much, thank you, I really appreciate that. What are you doing here?
We're making a garden representing Jesus' resurrection.
Oh, fantastic. Where's the seeds then? Can you put one in there? Thank you very much. Teamwork.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
Teamwork makes the dream work. Very good.
Are you going to remember this moment?
I am, because I'm going to have a sunflower, and when my children say, where did that come from, I'll be able to tell them.
Yeah, do you think your children will actually ask you where the sunflower come from? Who can say? Let's talk to Scarlett Maguire, pollster and founder of Merlin Strategy. Scarlett, very good morning to you.
Morning.
So, we haven't really seen much of Keir Starmer. He's been away. We don't know where he went. We don't know if he was on holiday in this country or whether he went somewhere further afield. We don't know whether he went with his family. It's all been a bit secretive. He suddenly pitched up in this church yesterday. I think the Pope passing away will mean he'll probably have to come out today and say something about that, won't he?
Yeah, I'm sure we'll be hearing from Keir Starmer today. I do think it's quite interesting that actually we've not really been hearing much from Labour or the Conservatives in the run-up to the local elections on May the 1st, potentially because they're expecting to have quite a bad time in them. But it is quite interesting that we're not seeing more of them at this time of year.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, we'll talk about Reform and the poll that came out about them over the course of the weekend. But it is weird, this story, isn't it? Because, I mean, I said it actually 5 days ago when this story first happened. Surely now Keir Starmer, who has previously been quoted as saying that he believes that some women can have a penis. He basically has said he's in favour of trans rights. He's in favour of trans rights being the same as human rights. Now he's going to have to come out and say that he is the man who loves the rule of law. He loves the framework of law. He thinks that the law is the final arbiter of all things, and therefore now that the Supreme Court has ruled, then we must abide by it. Surely that's what you should say, isn't it?
I mean, I think when we do hear from it, I would expect him to say something along the lines that you've said. I mean, we also know now that this is not, I mean, it has been a very controversial issue in the past, but especially with the Supreme Court ruling. But even before then, we could see that scepticism on transgender rights was increasing across the board over the last few years, including amongst people you might not necessarily expect. So you would have thought that I think we'll be hearing from him that he supports the verdict.
You would think so. But of course, there's trouble inside of his own ranks, aren't there? Because even over the weekend, the Mail on Sunday broke the story, but the Telegraph's followed it up today. Number 10 saying they're not going to do anything to deal with members of their cabinet even and other Labour MPs who are openly discussing on WhatsApp groups what they can do about this ruling and whether they can have a meeting after the Easter recess to try and figure out a way around it. That seems to be what an awful lot of Labour politicians are saying.
It's certainly a particularly fraught internal issue for the Labour Party, much more so than it would be, say, in the Conservatives, although not completely within the Conservative parties. There will be people within the Conservative Party that disagree. But it would be interesting to see what those Labour politicians are doing. I know we were seeing reported messages from some ministers, but we will see, especially if they are people who do successfully manage to mount a claim with the European Court of Human Rights, which might be where this is heading.
Yeah, I don't know what the answer is to that, really, because I'm not sure, again, if Keir Starmer, as the Prime Minister, was somehow forced into a position that he had to ignore his own Supreme Court in order to adopt a different decision made by the European Court of Human Rights, that would make him look really weak, wouldn't it?
I do think that if this did go to the European Court of Human Rights and they were found to be in disagreement with the Supreme Court, that would probably bolster the campaigns of those who want us to leave the European Court of Human Rights, which I think is what you're getting at.
No, not really. No, I'm just saying that it would be politically bad news, I think, for Starmer, just as the kind of, you know, constitutional head of the government, to be seen to be siding with a foreign court over his own.
Yeah, I doubt he would sign with the foreign court. I think everything we've seen from Keir Starmer in the last 12 months or so, yes, he's being silenced at the moment, but I think at this juncture, he would not come down on that side of the debate.
Yeah. No, I think he would be very unwise to do that, and I think that's why this is a much more incendiary problem for him than he thinks or he even realises, and I assume that's why he hasn't said anything, because everywhere he steps on this subject, he's got a problem.
He does have a problem, and he's had a problem on this for quite a while. He's tied himself up in knots in previous interviews. Remember that famous LBC interview?
Yeah.
And since then has obviously changed his tune quite a lot, as have actually quite a few of the Labour frontbenchers, particularly thinking of people like Wes Streeting and others who are feeling more confident, I think, voicing the things they felt initially.
Yeah, absolutely right. Rachel Reeves is off to Washington tomorrow, apparently, to talk trade with the US. I'm not quite sure if she's meeting the president, but she'll no doubt be in the White House at some point. What will Labour be hoping she can get from that trip?
I think we know that Labour are hoping for a free trade deal of some sort with the United States of America. We will see if they're able to achieve one. I think they are struggling at the moment to walk a line between being amenable to the United States and also trying to sort of show that they are patriotic and have Britain's best interests at heart. We've seen that actually this is something that incumbent governments are sort of taking different attitudes towards across the world. But at the moment, Keir Starmer tends to be on the more appeasing side of those governments.
Yes, exactly right. But I guess the difficulty for an awful lot of what Labour does is how it all looks, isn't it? And I mean, you know, Georgia Maloney was there last week having a pretty nice time with Donald Trump. Will Rachel Reeves get the same treatment? Will she get to see the president in the Oval Office? You know, will it just be J.D. Vance because technically, you know, he's number 2 and she's number 2? You know, all of those kind of diplomatic niceties are quite important, aren't they?
They're incredibly important, and they're not going to be able to keep everyone happy with them. So even if she does get a fantastic welcome and is sitting in the Oval Office with the president, that will annoy or antagonise quite a lot of Labour's base. Just as there'll be reports of potentially the deal agreements not going very well and all those talks not progressing in the way they might if she weren't to get that. So it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, it's not going to help her either that Lord Fuchs, the Labour peer, has lodged a complaint with the Speaker of the House of Lords to say he does not want, under any circumstances, Donald Trump, if he comes on a state visit to this country, to address the Parliament because he thinks that Donald Trump has said things about Britain that should preclude that from happening. You know, Keir Starmer hates it when anyone in his government says anything negative about Donald Trump. He won't be happy about this.
No, I wouldn't have thought he'd be happy with that. It goes completely against everything that Keir Starmer and indeed some of his top team. I'm thinking, for example, the charm offensive that David Lammy has been on with Republicans even before the election. It goes against their policy at the moment, which is not to criticise Trump publicly, potentially because they felt like they overexposed themselves when they were so the last time around. But no, I should think he wouldn't be happy with that.
No, exactly right. And let's talk about the poll that went out at the weekend. More in Common. I know that it's not your polling company. I'm sorry about that. But 16,000 voters, quite a big chunk of the population that they looked into. And following on from the Sun poll that was done last week by the political editor, and of course Reform UK would win the most seats in Parliament if a general election was held imminently, according to this poll.
Yeah, it was a sort of shocking poll finding that Reform UK, if there were to be an election tomorrow, would likely have the most seats. I mean, I think there's a couple of things to say. First of all, I think seat projections at this time in a parliament can be sort of quite dangerous, quite off. So if you think about it, they are. It's difficult to predict how people will behave, especially as actually at the moment an awful lot of voters are telling pollsters they don't know. Right. So it can be difficult to replicate the conditions of an election campaign or an election day in these sorts of polls. However, with that important caveat in mind, I do think it is very striking that we have had a run of polls that are showing Reform in one sense or another with the edge on the two traditional main parties. And I think the most interesting thing here is what's happening to the Conservative Party, who are not really in the picture at all. And that's something in particular, that Sun poll that you mentioned last week really drew out.
Yeah, absolutely right. And I mean, the Sun's poll, the Harry Cole one, which was done in mostly kind of red wall seats, was also very telling. This one says that big names like Angela Rayner, Yvette Cooper, Ed Miliband and even Wes Streeting would lose their seats. And I suppose the danger for Reform is that they peak a bit too early because there isn't a general election. There is, however, a local election process coming up very shortly.
Yeah, I think there are a few dangers for Reform, actually, and I'm quite interested. If you look at their vote, yes, they're coming out on top. Yes, they're being able to capitalise on the fact that Labour and the Conservatives are doing quite so badly, which they are. And so that's helping them in things like this MRP projection with the seat, because the vote is so split. However, I think if you look at their polls, they've actually been slightly stalling since January. Now, that might just be that they've reached a sort of naturalist ceiling, about 25%, 26% of the vote, which is about where they're hovering at the moment. Or it could be that, like right-wing populist parties across the globe, I don't really like that term, but we'll use it, they are slightly stalling in the face of Donald Trump and a slight backlash against Trump's policies domestically. So I think it'll be interesting to see. I do think, however, though, the local elections offers them a real chance. There's a whole chunk of Conservative voters still very much available to them. There's other voters too, but particularly if you look at the Conservatives, for example, who think Nigel Farage is doing a better job of leader of the Reform Party than Kemi Badenoch, who prefer to see Nigel Farage as Prime Minister. And I have a feeling that if Reform are able to deliver a substantial blow to the Conservative Party, you may see them get a boost with Conservative voters deciding that they are actually the better opposition to Labour.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt, is there, that Nigel Farage's relationship with Donald Trump appears to be less important to Nigel Farage, certainly, than it was. It may well not have changed at all when it comes to Donald Trump's sort of reaction to it all. But Nigel Farage doesn't talk about Donald Trump as much as he used to. I mean, there was a time when Donald Trump first got in, when you thought, well, Nigel Farage is going to be, right at the centre of everything that Trump does when it comes to Britain. But it hasn't appeared to be that that's what's happened.
No, I mean, indeed, Nigel Farage even caught a fair bit of flack when he was first elected for spending quite a lot of time in America rather than in Clacton. But no, I think especially in the last month, you've seen I don't know if you can call it a pivot, but a move away from Donald Trump and actually a conscious distancing himself.
Yeah.
I'm particularly thinking of when he compared Trump's tariffs to Truss's mini budget just a few days ago, and also on the policies of Ukraine. So I think you can see that Farage is at least seeing that at this moment in time, having a very close relationship with Trump is probably not an advantage with the British electorate.
Yeah, well, maybe not. We'll see. Good to talk to you, though. Thanks very much indeed. That is, of course, our favourite pollster, Scarlett Maguire, from founder of Merlin Strategy, telling us what is going on in the behind the scenes of those polls that are certainly showing reform to be very, very powerful and very, very strong right now. The breaking news that we're bringing you this morning happened just before 9 o'clock. Pope Francis, the first Latin American leader of the Roman Catholic Church, has died. The Vatican said it in a video statement on Monday morning. He was 88, had suffered various ailments in his 12-year papacy. Cardinal Kevin Farrell announced on the Vatican's TV channel, "Dear brothers and sisters, it is with profound sadness I must announce the death of our Holy Father Francis." Coming up, we'll speak to Ruth Gledhill as you watch a live shot there of the Vatican City. And of course, there'll be an awful lot of people who were there to see the Pope yesterday who will be there today. Very sad day for them. Ruth Gledhill, assistant editor of The Tablet, coming up next.
Legal aid is another thing that is being taken advantage of by people, paid for by the taxpayer, who have no bloody right to it, who are simply trying to get free.
And we have no say in who gets it. Nobody really understands it. All we ever hear from barristers and the legal profession is that, oh, you might think that legal aid is a good way for barristers to make money, but actually they don't really do very well on it. And that's the only story you ever hear. Nobody ever says, well, hang on, aren't we giving legal aid to the wrong people? Yeah.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to A Morning Glory, 9:22. Morning, Mike. Regards the defacing of statues in London, we're the most filmed people on earth and we have more CCTV in the capital than any other city on the planet. So why aren't arrests and prosecutions taking place? So if it was a right-wing demo, someone would have cut short his holidays and opened court, says Dean in Oxford. I think that's right. And talking of whether or not the trans lobby actually hate their own mothers, I've got this from Kate in Warwickshire, who says, yes, it does include their mothers. 3 of my 4 children have been brainwashed by the trans cult and have cut me out of their lives for not agreeing people can change sex. It is evil. And Mick says, do the Met think we are fools? Hundreds of officers in the CCTV in Whitehall, but nobody saw the criminal damage to the suffragette statue, even though it was an obvious target. Yeah, it makes you think, doesn't it? It does make you wonder. We've got some breaking news for you this morning, of course. It is that the Pope Francis, the first Latin American leader of the Roman Catholic Church, has died this morning. The Vatican said in a statement on Monday. He was 88 years old. He had suffered various ailments in his 12-year papacy. According to Cardinal Kevin Farrell, he announced on the Vatican's TV channel, dear brothers and sisters, it is with profound sadness that I must announce the death of our Holy Father Francis. And of course, J.D. Vance was out in Vatican City visiting the Pope yesterday. I'm not sure if it's going to turn out that he was sort of the last dignitary that Pope Francis saw. He was obviously doing a whole raft of different basic appearances and meetings yesterday in public. He was seen in public really for the first time in the last few days because he was suffering from pneumonia for quite some time. We've got Ruth Gledhill here from the Tablet. She's assistant editor. Ruth, a very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Thanks very much for joining us. A very sad day for the Catholic community around the world. Pope Francis hadn't been well, but he was appearing sort of in public more and more in the last few days. What happened this morning?
Well, it's devastating, really, because I, in common with thousands, if not millions of others around the world, thought that his trajectory was upwards towards continuing improvement and that his increasing numbers of public appearances after his discharge from hospital were a sign in that direction. However, there were some people who were maybe more alert, who noticed that he wasn't looking well yesterday and seemed distracted and not himself.
Yeah.
And some people did raise concerns, and some commentators did say, we need to pray for Pope Francis. And I guess that he just reached the end of the line.
Yeah. I mean, certainly a picture on the front page of The Guardian today where the crowds are welcoming him and they call him recuperating, but he doesn't look well, does he?
No, he doesn't look well. But there's been other times since he came out from hospital when he hasn't looked well, so it seemed like not looking well was kind of part of his recovery.
Yes.
If that doesn't sound too glib. I mean, it is a terrible shock, actually. I feel completely gobsmacked and shattered by it. Yeah. This totally was not expecting this. Just thought maybe he had another year or two at least to go.
Yeah, because he had, I think, pneumonia, quite serious pneumonia in hospital, and I know that it was described as moments where he was quite close to death, and they'd had to sort of almost bring him back. But there's no clue this morning as to what the cause of death actually is there? I think we might have lost Ruth there.
No, there isn't. I mean, it could well have been another one of those episodes, when he was... Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah, carry on.
Hello?
Yes, carry on.
Yeah, so I think it might have been maybe one of those episodes where he was, vomiting, inhaled his own vomit or something like that. That's so common with these kinds of breathing difficulties.
Okay.
And once you pass beyond a certain stage with those kind of illnesses, they are critical illnesses, and they can be very devastating.
Ruth, thank you very much indeed. Ruth Gledhill, their assistant editor of the Tablet. Pope Francis met with Vice President J.D. Vance in the Vatican on Sunday morning in a very brief private meeting. There's the pictures there. It may well be that J.D. Vance is the last dignitary that he would have seen, because I think in the afternoon he spent some time going out and being welcomed by crowds in Vatican City, in St. Peter's Square. So we'll keep you updated on whether or not there's any significance to that, whether he is in fact the last person to have seen the Pope alive from a foreign government. if you like, because obviously an awful lot of what the Pope does is kind of shrouded in secrecy, and an awful lot of what he does is sort of have meetings with heads of state and different people who come and visit him, and that was J.D. Vance going in. And of course what we'll need to do now is find out what the purpose, what the process is of finding a new Pope, which will be long and drawn out, no doubt, and they wait for the white smoke to appear at the top of Vatican City. Let's talk now to Sharon Davis, MBE, Olympic medalist swimmer, because she's been fighting the good fight for women's rights for as long as I can remember, actually. Sharon, a very good morning to you.
Good morning. Good morning. Interesting news, isn't it, over Easter? And
it is.
Who's a Catholic, and he's obviously going to be sad today.
Yeah, I think so. And an awful lot of Catholics, as Ruth Gledhill said, a bit devastated because they weren't expecting it. They thought that he was on the mend. They thought that he was going to somehow maybe go on for another year or two. So we'll obviously keep everyone updated.
Well, hopefully he has passed away peacefully in his sleep, because he was obviously working yesterday, wasn't he? So
he was. Yeah, we would hope so. Let's talk about something that you and I have been talking about now since about last Wednesday. I mean, I said, first of all, straight away when the ruling came from the Supreme Court, well, it's surely what we want to see now is the Prime Minister, I don't care if he's on holiday, coming out and saying, you know, maybe I was wrong over the years when I said that, you know, not all women have a penis, but some do. When he said that trans rights are human rights, and when he said all those things in support of the trans movement, and he should now come out and say, as the chief kind of prosecutor, as he often says of himself, as the man who is the law, he should now make it clear to the people demonstrating that actually, you know, the law is the law and we expect you to adhere to it.
Yeah, absolutely. The silence is rather deafening, isn't it?
It is.
I think the bits that we've seen in the paper about, you know, Chris Bryant and Angela Eagle conspiring behind the scenes to try to change things, you know, as you keep reiterating, Wednesday's Supreme Court ruling wasn't really a ruling. It was just a clarification of what the law was. Yeah. What I knew from sport was that we were constantly presenting what the law actually is to sporting bodies, and they were taking no notice of us, and they were bowing to extremists who were misinterpreting the law deliberately. And so obviously Wednesday we were extremely happy. I think it was very telling how violent the demonstrations were on Saturday. Yes. I mean, 7 statues vandalized, people urinating all over the place, placards, you know, asking for death of TERFs and death of J.K. Rowling, and the fact that absolutely nothing was done about it. And also what I get really frustrated about, and thank goodness for you guys, is that the mainstream media just don't show that. No. It was everywhere. You know, so it's what we've been telling everybody for such a long time, is that the threats to our livelihoods, the threats to our children, the threats to our lives, you know, from this extremely misogynistic movement, really quite scary. And what's really interesting, I was looking at some Ministry of Justice statistics. 4% of women are in prison for sexual abuse. 18% of men are in prison for sexual abuse of women. Over 50% of trans-identifying men are in prison for sexual abuse. Yeah. This is why women are frightened in confined spaces like toilets and changing rooms. So what we need to do is have respectful debate about third spaces. Yeah. The difficulty is they don't really want third spaces. We found this in sport. You know, when World Aquatics put on a race especially for transgender athletes, not a single athlete turned up. Right.
Yeah, because they want to be where you don't want them to be, which is in the women's section, because that's their sort of obsession almost, isn't it? Yeah. And I mean, as you say, not only is it a misogynistic movement, by and large, it's mainly men who are doing all this. It's mainly men. I mean, we've got, I mean, there was a video I saw of a man in Scotland. I don't know if you saw it yesterday, and J.K. Rowling, I think, reposted it, wearing a long grey skirt. And I don't think we can run it because there's too many swear words in it. But really aggressive, you know, very heavily kind of, you know, nasty about women themselves, saying that what he was going to do to them, and, you know, how they had no rights whatsoever. I mean, it's kind of, I find it kind of curious that these people want to be considered to be women, and yet they hate women.
Yeah, they do very much hate women, and they do very much expect women to bow to their will, and that's the problem. And that's why the law should be there and needs to be there. It needs to protect all the safeguards that women have worked years for, and it needs to protect the sports that women have worked years for. I can be saying with my hand on my heart, and I know I've been doing it for a long time, but I will now be doubling down on going after the FA, the ECB, you know, these people that have been putting the safety but also the injury risk of female athletes as secondary to the feelings of men who want to have an advantage in sport they should not be in.
No.
So this isn't about them not doing sport. This is about being in a category they don't qualify for.
Yes.
Just the same as a 15-year-old doesn't qualify for the under-10s, or
Right.
a heavyweight doesn't qualify for the bantamweight. You know, this is just about maintaining those categories that we've had for very, very sensible reasons, that's based in stats, statistics and facts. And those facts have been ignored, and the facts are being ignored again on Saturday, you know, by the mainstream media, that this is a men's right, a violent men's right movement.
Yeah, and it's funny, isn't it, that the trendiness of some of it, you know, we've got a bit of footage that we've been playing out this morning of these people saying, you know, it's one struggle, one fight, Palestine and trans rights, and you're kind of going, well, it's not really, is it? That's actually two fights, it's actually two struggles, so why are you putting them both together? It's kind of ironic. But I was listening to a conversation on Times Radio, I think it was on Friday, about Park Run, and how ludicrously these things get taken out of proportion, where, you know, the Park Run people are basically saying, oh, but it's not a race, it's just people going out in the park and having fun. It doesn't matter, you know, what your gender is, except for the fact that people get their times, people get put in order of finishing at the finishing line. You know, they start at the same place, and, you know, they're very proud or not, or disappointed. It's a race. You know, how can you say it's not a race?
They're given a time, they're given a position. And what's ridiculous is there's so many categories to choose from. You know, there's non-binary categories, there are I don't want to say categories. Yeah. And there was no reason why Parkrun couldn't introduce 2 more records and 2 more categories. Why not introduce a trans woman and a trans woman, you know, man category, create records for them? There were so many options that they could have done instead of throwing women's category under the bus.
Well, there was a famous marathon runner, a female marathon runner who was on the show, who you'll know. I can't remember her name, but she said that something like 250 of the first prizes in Parkrun for women have been won by men.
Yeah, well, $1.6 million worth of prize money from women's events was won in America last year by men in women's sports, you know, particularly cycling. Yeah. I mean, it is really crazy. I mean, the Boston Marathon's coming up, and they've got the women's category, which they've got men self-identifying in. They've got the men's category for men, and they've got the non-binary category, which will be won by a man. So you've got 3 categories, or potentially could be won by a man. Yeah. I mean, it begs belief, really.
And the London Marathon's next weekend. Have they got the same problem, the London Marathon?
Well, the London Marathon is a little bit like that, because what happens is that they do protect the elite athletes, but they don't protect anybody else.
Right. Yeah, which is often the case.
It's back to the same sort of scenario as Parkrun, really. But, you know, recreational runners want to have a fair representation of where they come. And I just think we can do better. You know, we can find better ways to be inclusive of everybody.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. Sharon, good to see you. Thanks very much indeed. Busy morning this morning, so we're going to leave it there. Sharon Davis, MBE, Olympic medalist, swimmer, and of course women's rights campaigner, a fantastically successful women's rights campaigner, as she was a very successful swimmer, who knows a thing or two about male and female sports. You know, why would you want to be in a women's division unless you wanted to take advantage of the fact that you were a man? It makes no sense to me. It's 9:35.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 9:37. I'm Mike Graham. Of course, this is the home of common sense. We've got breaking news that Pope Francis, the first Latin American leader of the Roman Catholic Church, has died. Vatican said in a video statement this morning, just before 9 o'clock. He was 88 years old, had suffered various ailments in his 12-year papacy. He met J.D. Vance yesterday in a brief private meeting. That was Sunday morning. And Cardinal Kevin Farrell has said this, announced on the Vatican's TV channel. Dear brothers and sisters, it is with profound sadness I must announce the death of our Holy Father Francis. Marco Colombo is here. He's a journalist in Rome. He's been working on a documentary series about Pope Francis. Marco, very good morning to you.
Hello.
Hello, Marco. How are you?
Hello, how are you? I'm good, thanks. I just got the news of the Pope. I got it from you, actually. Quite shocking.
Yeah.
Unexpected, especially considering that yesterday he was in St. Peter's Square.
Yeah.
But then again, he was 88 and spent 2 months in hospital, so we knew he was in precarious conditions.
Yes, and he does look as if he was quite frail in the pictures that we saw from yesterday. He met with J.D. Vance, the Vice President of the United States, on Sunday morning, because I guess he was continuing to have these private meetings with foreign dignitaries. I mean, as far as you know, would that be the last sort of foreign dignitary that saw him alive then?
Yeah, absolutely was. It was very much on his last day on Earth. There was speculation that he wouldn't meet with him, but then there's also been analysis about the fact that the Vatican, the Pope, has always been in good relations with America. And clearly, it would have been a bit of a diplomatic problem, clearly, for the Pope not to meet Vance when he met King Charles. I was actually there covering the event, so he did find the time to exchange presents with King Charles and Camilla, and he was in the same health condition, so it would have been diplomatic mess not to meet the Vice President.
Of course. And I mean, no word really yet on what the cause of death might be. He suffered from quite serious pneumonia, didn't he, when he was in hospital?
Yes, he did. He was out of breath. Basically. So he was saved. There's been a chronicle of his condition. He was saved several times from probably moments from passing away. And he actually, just before Easter, he welcomed the whole team, about 60 people in the Vatican, the people that looked after him, saying, "You saved my life." And he thanked them one by one. We saw that. So he had a deep respect and thankfulness for the people that looked after him at Gemelli for about 2 months.
Right. And he was thought to be a bit of a sort of slightly more untraditional pope, perhaps, than the one that went before him. I mean, I know it's difficult to say what happens next, but there will be a process now, will there not, to select a new pope? And would you say, or would you be able to say, whether the Vatican will go for somebody a bit more traditional?
Well, first of all, and I was just reading about it, the Pope himself, Francis, has changed the rules for the conclave. The conclave, as by the famous film that just came out, it's the ceremony for which the Vatican will gather, the cardinals will gather in the Vatican, in the Sistine Chapel, to choose the new Pope. It's clearly a political event. You know, there's been conversation and discussion going on for months. So Pope Francis has appointed several cardinals, so clearly has kind of like a political majority on his side. So there might be a chance there will be his legacy will be carried forward. At the same time, as you said, Ratzinger was a very different pope. There might be kind of a coming back of the Ratzinger types, the more conservative people, also in a political spectrum where things have changed dramatically since when he got elected in 2013. So it's different times. Maybe there's going to be a different pope.
Yes, and maybe a European pope or some from some other part of the world.
Well, that's interesting. There are some Italians. We haven't had an Italian for a while. Yeah, you have to remember that. So clearly, before the Argentinian, it was a German, and before that, it was a Polish. Yeah. So the Italians are quite used to have a pope. So there might be an Italian pope, Cardinale Ravasi. Cardinale Zuppi, who is the guy in charge of the bishops in Italy, Parolin, who is the foreign secretary, who has been meeting with J.D. Vance lately. So those are the forefronters, and those were the people close to Francis. So in a way, they would carry on his policies.
Yeah.
But there's always the surprise. I mean, Pope Francis was a surprise himself. He did not get into the conclave thinking he would come out as a pope back in 2013.
Okay. And will there be a period? There'll be a period of mourning, presumably. Does the body lie in state or anything like that?
There's a mourning. There's going to be clearly a funeral attended by all that have stayed. You have to remember that King Charles had to postpone his wedding because he had to attend the funeral of the previous pope. So it is quite a big event, a state affair. So we should imagine that all the head of states will come to Rome, and then the conclave will start with all this procedure. The white smoke, the black smoke, locked into this beautiful Sistine Chapel, where they have to decide who is going to be the new head of the Catholic religion.
Sure. Listen, really appreciate your time, Marco. Thank you very much indeed. Marco Colombo, journalist in Rome, has been working on a documentary about the Pope. That's Pope Francis, the first Latin American leader of the Roman Catholic Church, who has died. It was announced this morning by the Vatican. He was 88 years old, had suffered various ailments in his 12-year papacy. He's just confirmed there from Marco that it looks as though Vice President J.D. Vance was possibly the last foreign dignitary to meet with him yesterday morning in a brief private meeting where they exchanged gifts. King Charles, of course, saw him not that long ago either, but there is likely to be a big funeral which world leaders will attend, and then a period of mourning, and then, of course, they go looking for a new pope, and maybe this time he'll actually be an Italian. It's 9:43.
Legal aid is another thing that is being taken advantage of by people, paid for by the taxpayer, who have no bloody right to it, who are simply trying to get free.
And we have no say in who gets it. Nobody really understands it. All we ever hear from barristers in the legal profession is that, oh, you might think that legal aid is a good way for barristers to make money, but actually they don't really do very well on it. And that's the only story you ever hear. Nobody ever says, well, hang on, aren't we giving legal aid to the wrong people?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 9:47. I'm with you for about another 10 minutes. Peter Cardwell coming in. He'll keep you updated on all the latest news coming in from the Vatican. Of course, over there, where it's just been announced that the Pope has passed away. The Pope has died this morning in Rome, and that news coming from the Vatican just before 9 o'clock this morning. Let's talk now, though, about immigration, because we haven't actually talked about immigration at all on the show this morning, and that's pretty unusual, because normally there's a story. We normally do Migrant of the Day. We haven't actually done it today, so maybe we can offer that particular moniker to Jess Gill, founder of something called Women's Safety Initiative. Jess has got together with some other women in London just in the past few days to put a new organisation together. Jess, tell us about it. Morning.
Morning. Well, thank you so much for having me on. So the Women's Safety Initiative, basically something has to be done around the issue of immigration, and especially its impacts towards women, because I would say that immigration, mass immigration, illegal immigration, is the biggest threat towards women facing in Britain. We can see this, for example, I live in Tottenham. Every time I go outside, I get harassed, I get catcalled, I get stared at, and it's an incredibly uncomfortable experience. I can't even just go with my friends anymore to go on like a simple picnic on a day out without guys, without foreign men, just coming up to us constantly and harassing us, making us feel uncomfortable. And I feel like so many women share this experiences, because ever since we've launched, which was only last Wednesday, we've been receiving so much support, so many unfortunate stories of women who have had similar experiences to us. It's heartwarming to see the support, but it's shocking to see how common this issue is, and no one seems to speak out against it. Right. So that's the point of the Women's Safety Initiative.
And is it something that you've noticed getting worse in recent sort of months and years?
Well, I've only just moved to London over the past year, and I knew it was going to be bad. I didn't think it was this bad. Originally, I was from Bolton, which isn't the best place in the world when it comes to this issue. But this was just next level. Literally every single time I went out for the first week of living here, I had someone follow me, someone call me a whore, someone make inappropriate comments, just again and again and again. Every single time I left my house, my flat, someone would say something weird, and I spoke to my friends about this, and they said it was an issue as well. And I feel like so many women relate to this issue, but they're too afraid to speak out. So I think there's a lot of power. I know this sounds leftist, but there's a lot of power in empowering women to speak out against this, so we actually can see there's an issue, so we can see that it's a common experience.
No, the timing's great, though, because this is when an awful lot of women are being encouraged to speak out about an awful lot of things, like the trans debate, for example. You know, the only person who seems to have gone very quiet on that is Keir Starmer, who doesn't want to say anything because, of course, he'll have to admit that he got it all very wrong. And what sort of reaction have you had, then, from people who found out about your organisation? Is it something people can join?
Yeah, absolutely. We're looking for members. We're looking for supporters. I think, honestly, the way men have been treated with demonising chivalry, demonising them for, defending women, we need to combat that completely. We need to have men on our side to be protectors, quite frankly, because, I'm not going to be able to defend myself as an asthmatic young woman when somebody attacks me. So we need men at the centre of that, and we have received a massive amount of support. I would expect that we have some backlash, but no, it's just been support, because I think, quite frankly, it's undeniable now that this is an issue, and anyone who does deny that this is an issue towards how mass immigration is impacting women's safety and how mass immigration has impacted the country negatively as a whole is delusional, quite frankly.
Yeah, isn't it funny as well that all the sort of leftists who think that Adolescence is a documentary and one of the greatest works of television drama ever made never want to talk about the influx of what you would call multiculturalism and men coming here from countries where women really don't have very many rights at all. They only want to talk about, young white boys being somehow, misdirected by YouTube and by people like Andrew Tate. They never want to talk about allowing men into this country who might have a very derisory view of women.
abstract concept of, teach men not to rape, they say. Whereas if you are a rapist, you're not going to listen to, the sign, the advertisement saying, don't stare at women. That's not going to help. We need to put victims first with this. We need to teach women what to do when they unfortunately get into this situation. And the reasons why this is becoming more frequent, as you rightly pointed out, it's because we're importing so many people who come from countries where they do not value women. They come from countries where the femicide rate is off the charts, through the roof, where they do not respect women, where they treat women worse than animals, and we're allowing them to come over and providing them with so many benefits. And then when women speak out against it, when women go to the police, as I've received so many stories over the past few days about, they're ignored, they're dismissed, they're called racist, and we need to combat that because it's disgusting.
Absolutely. Well, listen, we congratulate you. Stay where you are, Jess. I just want to talk to Mike Jones, a migration expert who's here with us from, of course, the Centre for Migration Studies, I think it is. Mike, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. Great to be here.
Good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. I mean, Jess tells a very familiar story to most women who walk the streets of this country. They will be very much reminded of their own experiences, won't they?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if you look at the statistics in continental Europe, you see the same story played out time and time again. Certain nationalities from sub-Saharan Africa, the Middle East, North Africa, they're overrepresented in crime statistics, particularly when it comes to sexual violence. We've seen this in Sweden, other Scandinavian countries, Germany, and it's repeating itself here in the United Kingdom. And if you don't have any control over your borders, if it's a free-for-all, then obviously immigration is going to pose a risk to national security and to the safety of women. That's the matter.
Right, and it all started kind of in Germany and Sweden, didn't it? Because remember those sort of New Year's Eve celebrations in parts. I think it was Cologne. It started in Germany, where a lot of women were sexually assaulted. People were told later on by the German authorities, don't go out at night. In Sweden, they've had a real problem with the influx of too many migrants from different parts of the world. In Denmark, I'm told that they've managed to do something about it, and they're possibly going to be the inspiration for us to tackle illegal migration. What are they doing?
Well, I mean, the Danish system would be a step in the right direction. They have a very robust deportations unit. It provides a joined-up approach with the police and the border force. They have good bilateral agreements, with countries like Somalia, Afghanistan, Iraq, Morocco, and there are no benefits there for illegal immigrants. They confiscate jewelry. And there's just a political will there to deport people. But I'm very, very sceptical that you could have this system in the UK because of the differences between the legal systems. We have a common law tradition. Denmark has a civil law tradition. Right. So transplanting the Danish model to the UK would be very, very difficult because judges have enormous autonomy in this country. They see themselves as moral guardians rather than, inspectors. Yeah. So the human rights laws are interpreted very expansively in the UK. So I'm sceptical that we could imitate the Danish model here. So
for someone like Jess and her new organisation, Women's Safety Initiative, I mean, can you offer them any hope that they'll get some protection at some point soon?
Not in the short to medium term. I think politically that's going to be very difficult. But, the Labour Party are polling very badly. The political tide is changing. Reform UK are consistently within the number 1 and number 2 spots, and they're committed to getting rid of the Human Rights Act. Kemi Badenoch wants to disapply the Human Rights Act to immigration issues. There is a silver lining to the dark cloud.
Yes, well, let's hope that we can somehow find that sooner rather than later. Mike, thanks very much indeed. Mike Jones, a migration expert. Let's go back to Jess Gill, the founder of Women's Safety Initiative. I mean, Jess, what can people do if they want to join the organisation? What would you like them to do?
Well, I think supporting us on social media is a great first step. It's something everyone can easily do, just following us on Twitter and on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok as well, which again, we've received so much support through that. It's been incredible. And I think just showing that this isn't a controversial opinion. Like I said, we've not really received that much backlash. And my goal is to get normal women who have jobs, not like me, who's a student and political commentator. That's a fake job. But normal women who have civil servant jobs, who have jobs in marketing, who have jobs, you know, as doctors. We want them to go out against this and speak out against this, because I think it's important to show how prevalent this problem is. So that's the first step. The second step is becoming a member if you're a woman, joining our events, turning up to events and supporting us through donations. It means a lot, and honestly, like, we just want to make a difference, because quite frankly, as Mike Jones said, I don't think Westminster's going to do anything anytime soon. So we need to build that movement, we need to pressure our politicians, and we need to actually provide support for victims. And if we have the capacity to do that, then I think, you know, that's something we're going to definitely do in the future. One idea I had is providing therapy support towards grooming gang victims. I think that needs to be done. I think we need to actually, you know, support these people when the authorities have failed.
Yeah. Well, wish you luck with it, Jess. Thanks very much indeed. Jess Gill, founder of Women's Safety Initiative. You can find it on all social media outlets. I'm not sure if there's a website, but it's called Women's Safety Initiative. Just the breaking news this morning before we welcome Peter Cardwell. Pope Francis, the first Latin American leader of the Roman Catholic Church, died this morning. It was announced by the Vatican on just before 9 o'clock. He was 88, had suffered various ailments in his 12-year papacy. One of the last sort of what you might call foreign dignitaries to see him was J.D. Vance, who had a meeting with him yesterday morning. Peter Cardwell is here. Peter, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike. We will, of course, be reflecting the very sad news that Pope Francis has died. A long life, an eventful life. Yeah. A very different type of Pope as well in many respects.
Quite untraditional. Right?
Yes, so many different details, especially about him putting on his priest's cassock, actually, and going out during the night in Rome and ministering to the poor. He washed the feet of homeless people, for example, and prisoners. Very, very different Pope, certainly much more in the liberal wing of the Catholic Church. And of course, he will be mourned by so many hundreds of millions of Catholics worldwide. We'll be reflecting that. We'll be speaking to the associate editor of the Catholic Herald. We'll be speaking to Anne Whitcomb. We'll also be talking about Keir Starmer. He's back from his holiday. Under pressure to say something on trans. He hasn't so far, but he's just back from his holiday.
He'll have to come out and say something about the Pope, presumably, won't he?
I would imagine so, yeah. I'd be surprised if a statement doesn't come out probably